Well, that was a scare yesterday up at the airport. If you were up there, I'm sure it turned into an absolute nightmare, whether you were trying to pick somebody up, drop somebody off, if you were flying in, flying out. You had an absolute mess on your hands. 6:04 on a Monday. Thanks for being here on KCMO Talk Radio. So there was a threat yesterday that came into KCI at about 11:50 in the morning. That's when the incident was first reported by the aviation department. And as a precaution, as we learned throughout the day yesterday, you had evacuated sections of the airport terminal. You had flights stalled coming in and out of KCI. You had the FBI obviously made aware of the incident. They were heavily involved in what happened yesterday up at the airport. You had people standing out in the tarmac. Thank goodness it was not mid-July out there. Who knows what that would have looked like. You had a pretty pleasant day for that yesterday. It wasn't too cold, wasn't too hot. And you obviously had disruptions that extended well into the afternoon and evening at the airport. It was a mess. Who was it? Well, we don't really know. And if I have a criticism right now for the local government, state of Missouri, federal government obviously involved, Sean Duffy and Kash Patel both posting about Kansas City yesterday. And from Sean Duffy, he writes here, the security incident at KCI is now clear and normal operations are resuming. He says here, I want to thank law enforcement, including the FBI, for their timely response. The safety of passengers, airport staff, and crew members is always our number one priority. Kash Patel, the FBI director, he also posted something yesterday afternoon at about 3 o'clock, noting here an update on the earlier threat at Kansas City International Airport. FBI and our law enforcement partners quickly responded to the scene and secured the area. The threat was reviewed and determined not to be credible. Terminal has been swept, cleared, and normal operations resumed. Threats like these are a federal crime. FBI and law enforcement partners will fully investigate and bring justice to anyone responsible. See, I think Kash Patel screwed up a word there. How about everyone responsible? Not anyone responsible. Maybe I'm nitpicking, but you can't have these threats, and we've had threats like this, obviously, pop up on airplanes and airports around the country over the last couple of weeks, and now it's come here to Kansas City. We need to know more. Who called it in? Was it even a phone call? We don't even know that information right now. And I'm not saying they have to share every little bit today or yesterday as this stuff's unfolding, but we better get some answers soon, by the way, as to what exactly happened yesterday up at the airport, because Kash Patel is right to note they're a federal crime. So what are you doing about it? Okay, I believe that the FBI yesterday did everything in its power to handle things the right way, the professional way, and the appropriate way, along with local law enforcement here in Kansas City. That's great. But at the same time, guys, we're not going to sit here and just forget about this in 3-4 days. You got to work to figure out who exactly this was. And you have a very dicey situation on your hands if you're Kash Patel, if you're Sean Duffy, and that obviously goes all the way up to President Trump. Are these threats tied to what is going on in Iran? Are these threats responses to what is going on in Iran? Even if they're not credible in nature, they have obviously upended thousands of people's days yesterday. Is that what this is really about? Just making this whole thing inconvenient?
A little bit of local skepticism, too, because you have the potential ICE facility arsonist and you have the Liberty Memorial throw the firecrackers away thing.
Yeah.
So it seems to be. They were called explosives. So anyway, there's a reason for local skepticism.
Absolutely. You're right about that, John. That's kind of that third thing over the last couple of weeks that makes you say, okay, what's really going on here? And for those of you wondering, with the burning of the facility down in South Kansas City that's expected to be an ICE facility, or it could end up being an ICE facility, that is still being investigated by the feds. So, yeah, we've kind of got all these local things where people are scratching their heads saying, what's really going on here? And what are our federal agencies really doing about it? You know, the president obviously has, I think, a lot of leeway from his supporters when it comes to Iran. At the same time, I do think that leash will start tightening. And when it starts tightening, it's going to happen very quickly. And if you get more threats of domestic terrorism, if you get threats from people showing up to the airport who don't feel safe, jump on an airplane. There was that incident, in Nashville last week where a guy got arrested, got dragged off an airplane for making threats. If those things start to happen with more frequency, I'm not saying you kowtow to the terrorists or anything like that, right? You can't do that. You can. But you do start to create a malaise, and you do potentially set back the broader mission and lose some of that public support that otherwise would be there. And that's why getting a rest in this situation up at KCI yesterday is critical. And I mean, they can't just move on to the next thing. Too often that happens. They just move on to the next thing and hope that people forget. And when you flood the zone as a strategy, that's oftentimes what can happen. Well, you know, people are going to forget. No, they're not going to forget. Especially not here in Kansas City after yesterday. And, it's something that obviously we'll be keeping a close eye on here today and tomorrow. And I've reached out to our federal officials. I mean, I've pinged people about getting a hold of Kash Patel and Sean Duffy to try to get more information, although the investigation side is obviously going to be more of a Kash Patel FBI deal. But still, you also had another incident over the weekend that got attention that was much more legitimate than what we had here in Kansas City. But it also ties to clashes between different factions of people, and in this case, it could have very much turned deadly. The New York Police Department announced on Sunday that a third suspicious device has been recovered as part of an ongoing investigation into an IED thrown during dueling protests outside of Gracie Mansion, where the mayor lives, one day earlier. This happened on Saturday. Police said officers identified a suspicious device inside of a vehicle, and they temporarily evacuated nearby buildings while the bomb squad assessed the threat. NYPD went on the right on X that they have safely removed the suspicious device from the area for further testing, and that those who were evacuated are now allowed to return to their homes. The area remains closed to vehicular traffic. FBI confirmed last night the second device recovered near Gracie Mansion has also been identified as an IED. So what happened is that on Saturday morning, there were dueling protests going on. There was one by some right-wing activist named Jake Lang to oppose public Muslim prayer. And then you had a counter-protest also gather nearby. So what happened then is that an 18-year-old counter-protester ignited and threw a device towards the protest area. Police say the 18-year-old then retrieved a second device from a 19-year-old, lit it, and attempted to flee. Both suspects, Emir Balat and Ibrahim Kayumi, were both taken into custody, according to police in New York City. So 3 federal law enforcement sources told Fox News that one suspect allegedly shouted Allah Akbar before igniting and throwing the IED. It was thrown near Gracie Mansion, and obviously it was taken care of by the bomb squad, and obviously that has been investigated over the weekend as well. So that was a much more tangible thing in New York City than what happened here in Kansas City. But if these kind of issues and incidents are continuing to crop up around the country as they have been over the last week, well, you do not want to demoralize the American people right now. You don't. I felt like we were finally kind of digging out of what has been a 5-6 year malaise, and it wasn't happening overnight, but you were starting to feel it. And this war has major political ramifications for potentially setting a lot of that back. And it's not that I think that they're doing the wrong thing here. I don't, but I'm also being realistic that they're rolling the dice in a major way. And if this thing is not done in a few weeks and taken care of in short order, well, it's only going to spiral. And that's not going to be good for anybody, whether it's Donald Trump, the administration, or the rest of us here in Kansas City and around the country. Coming up, overnight, you saw a lot of movement from one particular thing. What was happening? What was it? Why is it happening? We'll tell you about next right here on KCMO.
Vince Colonnese here. Join me for your lunch hour from 11 to 2 on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Oil prices were all over the map over the last 12 hours. My goodness. So yesterday at 6 o'clock, the market futures opened up and oil spiked 10, 11, 12% right out of the gates. Way more than that. It went from like $91 a barrel. The futures spiked up to $108 a barrel. So do the quick math on that. You're looking at about 20%. And then they kept going up yesterday. By the time many of us went to sleep last night at about 10 o'clock, oil futures had trading at $118 a barrel. Now, as of 20 minutes ago, we're back down to $102 a barrel for the price of oil. But this number has obviously skyrocketed over the last just couple of weeks or so. And getting over the $100 a barrel number, that was the first time it has happened since, obviously, the fallout of Russia's war on Ukraine. So clearly, oil traders are a little uneasy right now. Now, that being said, I've got a couple of reactions to this I want to share. First, I'll share Charlie Gasparino's reaction, our buddy over at Fox Business Network, Mizzou's finest graduate over in Columbia. He had a post up on this yesterday, and I thought to myself, I can just see Charlie saying this. Like, I'm reading the post on X, and I can just visualize Charlie in his Charlie voice.
Got that Charlie voice.
Exactly. Just got done with a pack of smokes, getting ready for the day. All right. So here was Charlie Gasparino last night as oil topped $100 a barrel for the first time in 4 years. As someone who has covered the markets for years, I will say this. Commodity traders, like equity traders, in the words of a smart bond trader I know, are imbeciles. He writes here, they trade off headlines, totally myopic in short-term thinking and predicting. They always screw up what's actually going down, never seeing around corners. It was the case in the run-up to the 2008 crisis, where there were more than a few market rallies before the whole market blew up. Charlie Gasparino writes here, the oil price spike has the same feel to it. It's not considering that within days, we will 100% control the supply of oil coming out of the Straits of Hormuz, or that Iran will be 100% decapitated as a military force and financier of terror. There will be peace divided to all of that, peace dividend to all of that. Meanwhile, buckle up as the Karens who control oil prices have their say, at least for now. That is great from Charlie Gasparino. How about a round of applause for Charlie Gasparino? He basically says here, these commodity traders with these oil futures that have spiked, anywhere from 10 to 20% over the last 12 hours are imbeciles in his words.
I thought it was magic how the price was $2.99 on both sides of the state line and in county to county in Missouri.
Well, just wait, man.
Beautiful, huh?
Just wait. There might be more coming here on that front.
Well,
Jeez.
I get that it should be up, but usually Kansas is more, is what I'm saying. There wasn't like a mathematical equitable price raises. Everybody hit $2.99.
Hey,
seemingly.
That's what it seemed like last week.
Price gouge to me, and so I still am voting with my dollars around town.
You got to do what you got to do, man.
Did find $2.89 close to me, so I'm taking that as a victory.
I just hopped on FanDuel Predicts. It's a new FanDuel market. You can see into the future. You can predict things. And crude oil is on there now. I can bet by the hour.
You can bet crude oil prices by the hour on FanDuel?
Yeah, so if it's going to be above $100 by 9 a.m., I could win $7 on a $25 bet.
Really? Oh, my goodness. I may have to dabble in this.
I might throw down. I got 25 free bucks.
Get Charlie Gasparino on the horn. Can you guys go book him here before 9 o'clock?
We know a guy.
Yeah, geez. I didn't have him planned for the show, but I may have to give Charlie a ring here, see what's going on. See if he's got room in the next 2.5 hours to join us before that 9 o'clock hits. Hey, Charlie, we got a big bet coming up. Going to hit at 9 o'clock. Over under $100 on the oil, buddy. What do you think? Oh, my goodness. Wow. So that was Gasparino after the overnight oil prices went up and down all over the place. And then on a little more of a sobering analysis, I've got this from Alex Piltsis. He is a national security analyst with CNN. I thought he also had a fair take yesterday on what exactly is going on with these oil prices and how this is not the end of the line. This is not, oh my goodness, we're going to $5 a gallon for oil or gas. It's happening overnight. Just wait, save your money. He did give, I thought, a fair analysis of what we're going through right now.
We get very little Gulf oil coming to the U.S. The impact directly of that oil that's not really coming out, about 20 million barrels a day, really goes to markets in the east, so over to India and China in that direction, right? But there's an overall, market effect in terms of the price of oil, which we're seeing now at Brent crude there at about 108 a barrel, or WTI crude about 108 a barrel. In speaking to some of the ship brokers who are responsible for moving oil around the world, they're saying that this could spike somewhere between 100 to 150. We've got about 7 to 14 days or so before the Straits of Hormuz really turns into a crisis. Lloyd's of London, others in the insurance business, right, are people insuring ships. They're not in many cases because of the current geopolitical situation. So the United States is actually building an insurance mechanism to help insure those boats to transit the Straits. And they're talking about U.S. military escorts going in and out. In speaking to folks with a level of risk, it's assumed that the most risk takers in the industry are really the Greek shipping owners, and the Chinese need the oil. So the suspicion is if the Greeks and the Chinese, the ship owners, get together, they could probably put together movement of somewhere between 4 and 5 million barrels, a day coming out of there. But that's only 25% of the total volume. That also, is notwithstanding any potential drone attacks or things of that nature coming out of there. So once the oil storage tanks are full and gets backed up, they have to shut down production on the back end. It takes a long time to sort of turn that back on. So the ripple effects will last for a little bit.
So the ripple effects are what this is really about. It's not about what's going on here in the U.S. It's not about our need for oil. Obviously, the president has focused on energy independence back here at home. But it's a global market, right? And Iran exports about 1.6 million barrels of oil a day, and it mostly goes to China. And now you've got a lot of this oil backed up in the Strait of Hormuz, so that's what's impacting the global market because demand has not slowed down. But obviously, naturally, over the last week and a half, the supply has. It's just supply and demand, but the traders, to Charlie Gasparino's point from Fox Business, are being, in his words, imbeciles right now. They're overreacting in his estimation. And we had two financial experts on last week. We had our buddy Mark Falter, and we had Taylor Riggs, also from the Fox Business Network. And they both thought, not that, they could be wrong here, but they both felt like this was a temporary spike in gas prices that can very quickly come back down. And the president, by the way, will definitely need that to happen. 6:28 on a Monday. Bill O'Reilly is going to be here at 8 o'clock on KCMO Talk Radio. Do not miss that. And former Kansas City Fed Chair Esther George will be here at 9 o'clock. Coming up, more bad news for one of the shooters from the Chiefs parade next.
from the nation's heartland. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
This is why the juvenile system is such a mess, and it's why it's an underreported story, not just in Kansas City, but around the country. So if you didn't see this over the weekend, a man accused of robbing someone at gunpoint at a Kansas City gas station is now facing serious felony charges. And it just so happens that he is one of the teenagers who happened to fire a gun during the shooting at the Chiefs Super Bowl rally more than 2 years ago. I mean, what was it? 25 months ago? 2 years ago last month that we had that tragedy that left Lisa Lopez Galvin dead at the Super Bowl rally. And now, fast forward 2 months and change later, and Asir McKinnon, who was 16 2 years ago, is now 18, is behind bars in Jackson County. He's been charged with 2 violent felonies, including first-degree robbery, after investigators say he robbed a man at gunpoint at a gas station on Troost Avenue less than 2 weeks ago. So the way it's being framed here in local media, this is how Fox 4 writes it. And Fox did a good job with its piece. I'm not picking on them. But they write here, the new charges are raising renewed questions about whether the outcome of his earlier case in the juvenile justice system prevented a more serious consequence, and whether that decision could have changed what happened next. The answer there is yes. That is the answer. The answer is yes. And now this was under Gene Peters Baker's regime. Just to be clear, this was not something that Melissa Johnson was handling here in Jackson County. And, you know, Gene, I guess, could have gone out there and charged some of these people as adults. They elected to allow the juvenile court system to take care of it. And that can be hit or miss. I understand you don't want to charge a bunch of 16-year-olds as adults every single time something happens involving teenagers. However, in that specific instance, that may have been one, in hindsight, that you might have wanted to take a little more seriously because you knew the juvenile system was going to slap them on the wrist. And considering they put thousands of people at risk of death in Kansas City on one of the most celebratory days in Kansas City history, you would think that that would be something that might have gotten the attention of the people in charge a little bit more than it seemingly did. So instead, what you get here is you have this guy who was arrested at the time. McKinnon was 16 years old, and he was charged with unlawful use of a weapon after firing a gun. His attorney argued that he acted in self-defense and in defense of others. He was also charged with resisting arrest. A judge ultimately ruled that McKinnon, this was 2 years ago coming out of the Super Bowl shooting, would not stand trial in adult court, where he could have faced prison time. Instead, the case was handed to family court, meaning it remained within the juvenile justice system. And then what do you get? He turns 17, he turns 18, he's robbing people at gunpoint on Troost Avenue. See, soft on crime policies don't typically impact, they can, but they don't typically impact the people with money. Because these criminals and these thugs are out there terrorizing people filling up their gas tanks on Troost Avenue. Okay? The guy living off Ward Parkway is most likely not filling up on Troost and vice versa. And that's why being tough on crime is not about catering to a certain subset. In fact, what it actually is standing up for the people who are most vulnerable in the poorest, most violent communities in Kansas City and anywhere else in the country, for that matter. That's what it's actually about. If you claim to care about poor people, if you claim to care about people in high crime parts of Kansas City, you should want the toughest prosecutors you can possibly find. No BS and no nonsense. That's what you should want, John.
Yeah, it seemed like we're always looking for a reason not to press charges now. So I think we have a different viewpoint going forward now.
Well, I think, yes, you're absolutely right, especially, in some of these major American cities where somehow you have one particular political party that thinks soft on crime is helping the criminals, therefore helping the communities. Well, we don't want to throw people in cages. No, but you actually, you know what? People who are law-abiding citizens in lower income neighborhoods, they deserve security too. They deserve safety as well. And when these people are not taken care of, where do they go to commit their crimes? They are going to oftentimes impoverished parts of Kansas City and cities around America. That's where they go. I mean, yes, they'll look at the nicer neighborhoods once in a while if they can pull something off, but the run-of-the-mill crime and drug trafficking is happening in low-income parts of Kansas City. That's it. This is another case in point. And, you know, to see this guy back in the news after the terror that he was a part of a couple of years ago, it just brought up so many emotions. It brought up so many feelings and reactions. And it reminded me how poorly the system can be handled, especially as it relates to young people. Because typically, if you're firing guns at a Super Bowl rally, you know, you don't just wake up the next year and become a choir boy. That typically doesn't happen. So a judge ruled that McKinnon would not stand trial a couple of years ago where he could have faced prison time. Of course, instead it's handled in the juvenile system. He later admitted to resisting arrest, to engaging in behavior that was bad for his welfare and the welfare of others. He spent an unknown amount of time in the custody of the Missouri Division of Youth Services before being released. According to court documents, on February 18th of this year, a man was inside a gas station on Troost Avenue purchasing a drink when McKinnon, this young man who was 16, involved in the Super Bowl parade shooting, now 18, walked in, pressed a gun into the victim's back. Investigators say McKinnon then stole the man's gun before leaving the store. Police say the entire incident was captured on surveillance video. Not exactly a Mensa member now, is he? Police say in the probable cause statement, the 18-year-old should be considered a danger to the public. Yeah, let's see what Melissa Johnson does with this. I talked to a couple of cops last week. I actually saw Melissa Johnson on Friday night. I'll get to that here in a second. But I talked to a couple of cops last week about a couple of different things, detectives and whatnot, and they were all very high on Melissa Johnson and the job that she's doing in Jackson County. So that's great. And we've been complimentary of the work that she has done thus far. Now, the bar was very low, just to be clear, with Jean Peters Baker. I mean, you can't get a lower bar than what you had in this town with Jean for the last, 8 years or so in Kansas City and Jackson County. So she had a low bar, but she's clearing it, and she's clearing it with ease. So we got to give her credit where it's due.
Well, absolutely, because some people come in and say, well, I've got to get a feel for what's going on here. It may take me a year.
No, she's hustling.
No, exactly.
She's hustling. So my parents are in town. So Friday night, Kate and I went out to dinner. And afterwards, we've agreed, and we've talked about this on the show, we're not going to go to 1587. We're just not. The prices are obscene, right? Mark's going to go and try to get like a half-off cheeseburger at some point. That's going to be Mark's plan.
Oh, yeah. Got to get the Andy Reid cheeseburger.
Mark knows exactly what he's going to get out of there for under $50. That's his goal. But she said, well, why don't we go try to get a drink? And honestly, I was like, I don't think they have a bar where you can do that. Like, I don't think they want riffraff like us just showing up there to the bar and getting a drink. And she's like, well, let's go check. So we walk up to the front door, and they say, oh, there's a half-hour wait for the bar. And we're like, all right, whatever. We're at the Lowe's Hotel, so we go up there, and we have a drink, and then they call us down. Now, we sit there at the bar, and once again, we just sat there for a drink and then left. But Melissa Johnson was walking out, came over and said hello, and it was a very pleasant conversation. I was complimentary of the work that she had done. Obviously, it wasn't her first time there. And you got the kind of political juice and capital that she's got, you're able to, I'm sure, be there more frequently. But we had a nice back and forth, a very pleasant conversation. Introduced her to Kate, and she had, I believe, her significant other with her, and he seemed like a stand-up guy as well. So it was a good conversation, a pleasant time. But I told her, I said, hey, I was talking to a couple of cops about you last week, and they have had glowing reviews thus far. So keep up the good work. Because I want to continue to encourage her office, and I think that they understand. They've got a heavy lift on their hands here. They got a lot of work to do to clean up the mess from the last administration. And it does seem like they're doing a good job thus far. But this one, and I didn't know about this broke like late on Friday, and I wasn't looking at the news Friday night. But this is going to be telling what she does with this 18-year-old who got arrested over the weekend for robbing a man at gunpoint at a gas station. And it's one of the same teenagers from the Super Bowl rally shooting just over 2 years ago. So this will be a very telling case for this prosecutor's office in Jackson County. We'll have to keep an eye on how they handle it. We'll get to our top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour. Next, the 6 at 6 right here on KCMO.
From Overland Park to Parkville, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
6:50 on a Monday morning on KCMO. Let's do it.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on KCMO Talk Radio. Number 1.
Top of the list, the evacuation at Kansas City International Airport yesterday was lifted after a possible threat. It was the aviation department that received a call at about 11:50 about a potential device inside of the airport terminal, as well as in the parking garage. Airport police and other law enforcement, including the FBI, worked quickly to evacuate travelers from the terminal, held inbound flights on the taxiway away from the gates during the event. Law enforcement determined there was no credible threat to the airport or those in the terminal. Once that determination was made, Kansas City's aviation department started working to resume normal operations. The terminal's evacuation lasted around 2 hours yesterday. You had Kash Patel on this, the FBI director, Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary. But if you were up there at the airport, traveling, dropping off, picking up, it was an absolute mess. I saw a video on the local news that the line back to the airport went all the way to 435. So that is a long wait yesterday. But thankfully, at least as of now, it was not a credible threat. But hopefully, Kash Patel, and he did say this in his statement, the FBI director said, whoever called this in or whatever happened here, we are going to make sure that we arrest because you have federal laws that were broken yesterday. So hopefully they'll have an answer to that and get somebody arrested pretty soon.
Number 2.
All right. Next up in our 6 at 6. A 7th U.S. service member has died in Operation Epic Fury. The unidentified soldier was seriously wounded on March 1st as Iran launched missiles and drones at U.S. installations across the Middle East at the start of the conflict. And CENTCOM writing yesterday afternoon, last night, a U.S. service member passed away from injuries received during the Iranian regime's initial attacks across the Middle East. The service member was seriously wounded at the scene of the attack on U.S. troops in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on March 1st. CENTCOM said it is withholding the release of the identity of the slain service member for 24 hours pending next of kin notification. So obviously, the last thing any of us want to have, you have already 6 who have died and now a 7th unnamed casualty from Operation Epic Fury.
Number 3.
Well, on Friday night, we had an EF0 tornado touchdown in Johnson County and then cross over the state line into Kansas City. This was confirmed on Saturday by the National Weather Service. So EF0 tornado, about 8 miles in length, 50 yards in width, wind speeds of about 75 miles an hour. So this popped up at about 11:34 near Lake Quivira, and it moved east through portions of Merriam along I-35 into southern Wyandotte County and then crossed the state line into Kansas City, Missouri at about 11:40 on Friday night. The tornado ended near Westport, where it stopped to get a drink right around Southwest Trafficway at about 11:45. So nearly 8 miles in length, a maximum path width of about 50 yards. National Weather Service saying the majority of the damage was to trees, and thankfully no injuries were reported on Friday night.
Number 4.
And let's go to Olathe Northwest. 2 students have been charged with robbery and 2 are charged with battery after a fight broke out during a student-led protest at Olathe Northwest last month. Official charges come after 2 students were arrested and 2 were given juvenile citations, according to a police department spokesperson. Now, this comes, of course, from the ICE protests. Kansas City Star is not making that very obvious in this article here because they don't want to be like, yeah, the people that were protesting ICE actually beat up the other side here and all this. Kansas City Star is burying all of that in this piece. But an 18-year-old female faces 1 count of robbery and 1 count of interference with law enforcement in Johnson County. The other students are charged in juvenile court. 17-year-old male faces 1 count of robbery and another 17-year-old male and a 15-year-old are both charged with 1 count of battery. So once again, the kids who are protesting ICE, who are all about love and feel and good vibes, that went across the street and jumped a couple of kids who were way outnumbered and protesting their ICE protest, well, they end up getting hit and charged over the weekend.
Number 5.
And let's go to the Big 12 men's basketball tournament. Starts tomorrow in Kansas City. And this comes after the West Virginia women's basketball team won that championship yesterday here at T-Mobile, beating TCU. So the men start tomorrow, and that will include Kansas State. They play at 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus as the number 15 seed against 10 seed BYU. That is the third game of the day tomorrow in the Big 12 men's basketball tournament opening round. KU ends up as the 3 seed. So KU will play Thursday at 8:30 p.m. on ESPN2. TBD who they're going to play. But the Big 12 tournament gets underway on the men's side in Kansas City tomorrow.
Number 6.
And we'll go to the other side of state line where Mizzou is getting set for the SEC tournament. They will play their first game in the second round on Thursday at 12:30 in the afternoon. So that is perfect. Keatsman's going to be out at Conrad's in Lee's Summit this Wednesday and Thursday for a live broadcast. Join him afterwards. Watch some college basketball. Wednesday or Thursday, 11 o'clock at Conrad's in downtown Lee's Summit. You can RSVP now at kcmotalkradio.com. Mark's stopping by. John's stopping by. I will stop by at some point as well. It's going to be a lot of Big 12 and SEC hoops on Wednesday and Thursday. And you can join Kevin Keatsman for a little lunch and a lot of college basketball coming up later this week, Wednesday and Thursday. He'll be out there both days.
I'm having a Cuban sandwich.
There you okay. Well, don't
Already
tempt
got
me,
one day
John.
down.
Do not tempt me, man. That sounds pretty good. I can't wait. Coming up, TSA issues are impacting not just Kansas City, but the entire country. How bad is it? Next. Well, we had a mess on our hands here in Kansas City yesterday. It wasn't just motivated by government shutdowns and TSA issues, but obviously we had a scare here for a couple of hours when the airport terminal was evacuated. Flights were not taking off and not coming in, and delays were happening after threats came in at the Kansas City airport yesterday. Now, as of right now, there is nobody in custody. There is nobody who's been arrested for making these baseless threats at the airport, or I should say against the airport, but that's something that the FBI Director Kesh Patel says is happening. But as we get it started here in the 7 o'clock hour on a Monday morning, there are issues taking place at airports all across the country. And it's because of this partial government shutdown that is still underway. I saw Bill Malugin, he is one of the reporters on Fox News, post this over the weekend, that he was at one of the major airports in this country, and he polled 20 people, and he said only 2 of them even knew that there was a partial shutdown even happening right now in this country. How crazy is that? 2 out of 20 people, according to, it's not an official poll, but that does tell you something. And Bill Malugin's like, yeah, 20 people, 2 of them knew what was going on. That is wild. By the way, shoe on the other foot, I guarantee you that number's higher. Which tells you the story here is in part the way that many media outlets have just not covered the story because they know it's their friends who are causing the shutdown. Okay, so right now, TSA is the big agency that is not getting paid due to this partial government shutdown that is tied into Department of Homeland Security. Here's what the rub is. Democrats obviously don't like ICE. They don't like Border Patrol. They want to put more, they would call it guardrails, restrictions, whatever, on ICE. Republicans are saying, fund the government, have these debates at another time, but you can't hold the paychecks of TSA agents hostage for your political games. That's what the Republicans are saying. That's what the Democrats are saying. But to be clear, it's Democrats who are holding the funding back. They do have the power to do that right now, and they're using that power. So TSA puts out a post on its official X account yesterday. And it's video from, where's this video from? I believe it's from Houston, where there were major delays yesterday. Hobby Airport in Houston, that's the airport that flies all the Southwest flights. It's not the big international airport, but it's one of their smaller airports. They put up a post yesterday saying that basically you're going to need 4 to 5 hours to get out of here. Due to the federal government shutdown, passengers should arrive 4 to 5 hours before their flight to allow extra time for TSA screening. TSA wait times may exceed 180 minutes. My good. I mean, that's like going to Disney World, that kind of wait time. So TSA shared a video of people lined up outside of the airport terminal saying enough is enough. The Democrat shutdown of DHS must end. Now, Democrats are making, obviously, a political calculation that thus far, this shutdown, this partial shutdown, is not hurting them. Their friends in the media will largely protect them. And in the end, everyone's just going to blame Trump because that's what they do. But I'm not convinced that that's the case because yesterday, there are some people with some common sense, like Tim Kaine. I'm not saying he's got a lot of it, but he's got some of it. Of course, Hillary Clinton's former running mate, Democrat out of Virginia, he said yesterday to CBS News that it's time to pass the funding bills for DHS. He wants to fund TSA. He wants to fund FEMA, the Coast Guard, and cybersecurity and infrastructure security agencies. He wants to fund all 4 of those and then confine ICE and Border Patrol to 2 separate discussions and separate funding bills. So Tim Kaine is admitting we got a problem on our hands here. We got to stop this. We got issues at the airports right now. we also have threats of potentially domestic terrorism happening at a time when DHS does not have all the funding that it needs. That's going on right now as well. So the last thing you want is, God forbid, something tragic happens like what could have happened yesterday at KCI, what could have been the situation yesterday here in Kansas City, when the airport gets totally cleared out and no one can get in or out because of threats in the parking garage and also at the terminal. And God forbid that was something real and you don't have a Department of Homeland Security fully funded. What does that do to you? How does that set the country back? So the whole thing is an absolute mess. Now, you would think that if it was just about politics, like Kristi Noem got fired last week, right? You would think that that would maybe, if we were in a reasonable time in American history, cause some people on the other side of the aisle to be like, okay, we got our scalp. Kristi's gone. We didn't like her. We thought she used a heavy hand. There may have also been some corruption there. Trump fired her. I mean, I think it's a win for everybody. You know, I was a fan of that move last week when it happened, so I supported firing Kristi Noem. But you would certainly think that the other side of the aisle would say, oh, okay, I mean, he did something that we kind of like, and I don't know about this guy, Mark Wayne Mullins, but, you know, we'll take Kristi Noem being gone. Let's reopen the government. Let's get back to work. Not happening. Why? Because there's a political calculation here that they're Teflon, that they're never going to get the blame for the shutdown. The media is never going to cover this thing. But now that TSA is calling them out this morning, or last night is when that post came down, the official TSA account is saying enough is enough. The Democrat shutdown of DHS must end. That makes me wonder if now the TSA is coming out on its official social media accounts and blaming the obvious party for the shutdown, is the media going to continue to be in protection mode? Will today's news cycle finally wake up some of the more establishment media members? I'm not going to sit here and hold my breath, but if anything's going to do it, you'd like it to be that. And it's very rare when an agency like the TSA actually comes out and makes a political statement. So the fact that they did tells me that, you know, they basically believe, hey, there's one party to blame for this right now. And it's the party that's basically trying to use ICE and Border Patrol as a punching bag in the midterms. And as a result, you can't get the TSA agents paid up here at the airport in Kansas City or anywhere in the country. For the second time in 4 months, these poor TSA agents are going to have to forego paychecks. And they've got bills like everybody else. And they're getting squeezed here because of politics. And that is so disgusting on so many levels. Fine, you don't like ICE. You want to see some tweaks to ICE. Debate it at the appropriate time. Don't use the paychecks of TSA agents as political collateral in your little game. That's totally unfair to them. Don't do it. Don't do it, but it's happening. And they've now missed one paycheck, and they're a few days away from missing their second straight paycheck. Coming up in less than an hour, Bill O'Reilly is going to join us on KCMO. 8:05 is when he will be here. So we'll ask him about this and much more as, of course, the Operation Epic Fury enters a second week. Bill O'Reilly at 8:05 on KCMO. And at 9:05, Esther George, the former chair of the Kansas City Federal Reserve, is going to be on the show at 9:05. So two big guests coming up this morning right here on KCMO Talk Radio. The O'Reilly Morning Update is right around the corner as well. And then we'll get to the big vote in Kansas City that is just weeks away. Where does it stand? All next.
from Smithville to Shawnee Mission. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, at the end of the day, we are excited to have on Bill O'Reilly coming up at 8:05 on KCMO, because when it comes to saying it like it is, no one knows how to do that like Bill O'Reilly.
I wonder if he feels the same way as I do about, so yeah. Ending a whole sentence or your statement or your thoughts. So, yeah.
I'll ask him about his most hated cliches if we have time when he joins the show at 8:05 this morning right here on KCMO in Kansas City. If you're not able to join us on 95.7 FM, you can stream us on our KCMO Talk Radio app or, of course, on the iHeart TuneIn apps as well. So we are, less than a month away from Kansas City going to the polls to vote on renewing the e-tax. Yes, the earnings tax back on the ballot. I feel like we were just doing this 5 years ago. Here it is again. So that's going to be on Tuesday, April 7th. And listen, the reality is it's overwhelmingly likely to pass. Why? Because Kansas Cityans vote on it. And the reality is, if you work in Kansas City but do not live in Kansas City, you pay the 1% earnings tax and you get no vote. It is truly the definition of taxation without representation. And if you live in Kansas City and you don't like the earnings tax, you also are kind of like, yeah, I don't like it, but the people that work here but don't live here kind of subsidize a lot of our services. So it's kind of a good deal for me, I think. So now you're starting to see some of the area politicians start stumping for the earnings tax renewal coming up on April 7th. Here is Jonathan Duncan in between harassing private sector employees and business owners who might, sell their facility to ICE or something like that. In between that and abusing private citizens, he spends time to walk down the street and tell you why it's important to vote yes on the earnings tax on April 7th. Here's what he dropped over the weekend.
I'm Jonathan Duncan, City Council 6th District, and I'm telling you to vote yes in April for the e-tax. Our streets, our street lights, our street signs, potholes, none of that gets fixed without the e-tax. Vote yes on April 7th to renew our investment in our city. Vote yes for the e-tax.
Isn't it amazing how, these politicians go out there and say, if you don't vote yes on this tax, well, you won't have streetlights that work. You won't have potholes that get fixed. A lot of people would say, are you fixing those potholes to begin with? Holy cow. Come on, guys. You don't do a great job of that, so I'm not sure that's the example you should be using. But every tax that gets brought up under the guise of, well, don't you want your potholes fixed and your street lights on? And don't you want, notice how he didn't say law enforcement because he's not a fan of law enforcement, but don't you want your street signs to be funded? Can we just do a GoFundMe for the street signs? I mean, do we really need a 1% earnings tax for the stop sign to be, put up once every 20 years and refurbished? What is that all about?
Does that count taking down the Paseo and then putting up a new sign and then re-putting up the Paseo? How much does that cost?
Yes, that's right. I forgot about that. That's a good point there, John. That's a very good point. So the potholes, he notes none of that gets fixed without the earnings tax. So what do you do with the rest of the money exactly? This is going to be the push for the next month. If you don't, if you want to have police, if you want to have potholes fixed, if you want to have the street lights on, you got to vote for the e-tax. Meantime, the vast majority of municipalities don't have an e-tax, so how do they make it work while Kansas City can't? What a novel concept. I'm not saying it's going down. It will pass. But we only do this once every 5 years. And now that you're starting to see some of the politicians lobby for it, I like to just play their clips or read their quotes in the newspaper, online, wherever, and just decipher how ridiculous they sound. As if a city can't operate without an extra 1% earnings tax, like no city could ever figure out how to do that when most cities don't do it to begin with.
I like the music behind it. That appealed to me. Very 70s. Aaron Spelling tonight on the Love Boat. Or Charlie's Angels sound.
Mark, you got that again? Can you line up that music for me again there, Mark? I want to hear that one more time. I wasn't really paying attention to the music.
I didn't think it pepped up the message, but I thought, boy, you're going back a little bit. This little disco era.
Let me see. Let me take a listen to that there, Mark. Mark's getting it all lined up for us.
Yeah.
I want to see that and hear that because I'm too busy listening to Jonathan Duncan's words.
Right. No, I'm with you.
And you're listening to the music, which is great.
Well, it seems like such an upbeat, uplifting message.
All right, Mark, go ahead.
Duncan, City Council 6th District, and I'm telling you to vote yes in April for the e-tax. Our streets, our street lights, our street signs.
On the Love Boat.
Potholes, none of that gets fixed without the e-tax.
I just I'm picturing John Travolta walking down the street eating a slice of pizza. That's what I'm visualizing in my head when I hear that.
I guess I didn't know what Jonathan Duncan looked like. I didn't know he was a man bun guy.
He's a big man bun guy. Big man bun guy. You know what that music reminds me of, though? That should have been playing in 1587. So, Kate, my parents are in town, so Kate and I went out. We just stopped by 1587, got a drink, and it was right out of the 70s. That's just what it looked like. A lot of brown, gold, brown, kind of had that 70s look. It reminded me of a show that James Franco was in 5 or 6 years ago on HBO called The Deuce, where he's like working in the porn industry in New York City in the 70s and 80s. And it was the setting. I'm just bringing that up because the setting was identical to that show. As someone who obviously was not alive in the 70s, my head just went back to that show,
Saw
The Deuce.
my first picture of that this week, and that's what it reminded me of, too. I thought, wow, that looks a little postmodern or, I don't know, way back.
70s disco, that's what it looked like. And that's what Jonathan Duncan's going for as well in this video. So I guess the 70s are back in Kansas City, baby.
All right, baby.
Well, let's go. Woo! Coming up next, news is 2 minutes away. Can this man save something we all love? Coming up on KCMO.
Coming up at 10 o'clock, it's Uncanceled on KCMO Talk Radio, right after Pete Mundo and Mundo in the Morning.
If there's one man who's going to save college sports, it's our man, Nick Saban. That's right. Nick Saban was at the White House on Friday, along with a bunch of other folks. You had the chancellor over at KU, Doug Girard, was there. You had the Big 12 commissioner, Brett Yormark, SEC commissioner, Greg Sankey. Everybody was there on Friday, late afternoon, for what is being dubbed the College Sports Roundtable. And everyone's trying to figure out how to fix what has become a sport that has absolutely no guardrails to it anymore. And if I could do one thing and just wave my magic wand and create the commissioner of college football, it would be Nick Saban. That's who I would pick, the former Alabama head coach who's won 7 national championships. And when I heard Nick Saban talk during the roundtable on Friday, I'm like, how quickly can we get this guy into this job? Here was Nick Saban Friday afternoon at the White House.
But I come here today with a question. What are the guiding principles for the future of college athletics? All athletics. I'm talking about football, basketball, Olympic sports, revenue, non-revenue, it doesn't matter. You know, my goal as a coach for my players, for our players, was to help them be more successful in life, that we would create an atmosphere and environment that would help them through personal development, academic support, 668 degrees and 17 years at Alabama, and help them develop a career as a football player. That was our goal, so that they were creating value in life and we were preparing them for their future past athletics. So what happened? You know, in this current system that we have, that became impossible to do because people, instead of making decisions about creating value for their future, they were making decisions about how much money could they make at whichever school they could go to or transfer to. So I think we have a challenge here today about the ramifications of this current system on how it helps players be successful in their future and how we can impact and create a system that will help and preserve the opportunity for student athletes to be able to have success in their future beyond athletics. So we need to develop an effective system of revenue sharing, authentic name, image, and likeness, authentic being you have marketing value, which now we have collectives, which just create opportunities, which just become pay for play. Eligibility issues where we have guys playing 6, 7, and 8 years.
That is Nick Saban Friday afternoon at the White House at this College Sports Roundtable. Everything that Nick Saban said there is correct. Every single thing. Notice how when he talked about NIL, which is name, image, and likeness, which is basically guys getting paid to play, that's not what it was intended to be. It was intended to be, hey, if Darren Peterson wants to come to KU, there's a car dealership in Lawrence that'll pay him however much money for his name, image, and likeness in a commercial, on a billboard, or whatever that might look like. Same thing with, say, Avery Johnson at Kansas State, quarterback, whatever. That's what it was intended to be. Instead, what it is trying to find the richest donors from all these schools and say, will you cut a massive check every year for us to fund a football team? And that's now what's going on in college sports. And it's an unsustainable model that can't continue forever. He's also right to note the transfer portal is an absolute joke. You got guys playing at 4 schools in 6 years. When they do the introductions on Sunday Night Football, they're going to have to take 2 extra minutes of time to do the introductions because guys are going to have to start introducing the 4 schools they played at over 4 years in the NFL. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. So, of all the things that Trump could do for the people that aren't paying attention to like the serious stuff, like Operation Epic Fury, if he can fix the chaos that's become college sports, put him on Mount Rushmore, baby. Let's go.
I know it's kind of a cynical overview, but it seems to me with college sports, they just simply legalized the corruption. They didn't go about setting up the system. They just said, hey, the car dealer can pay the kid now.
Yeah, well, exactly, but not even that.
Happened. At least it went around the back channels.
Exactly. But at least then there was still some element of you were getting something on the other end.
Yeah.
Now you just have like the richest boosters at these schools saying you're coming here to play basketball for $1 million and there's nothing in it on the other end. Nothing whatsoever. It's not a two-way street. There's no loyalty. There's no way to tell if a guy's going to actually live up his end of the bargain. It's madness. And I love college sports, and I hate to see where this thing is trending right now in basketball and in football.
I'm looking at a guy like A.J. Storr who played on KU last year. He started at St. John's, went to Wisconsin, went to KU, and now he's at Ole Miss.
Is that right? I
4
forgot about
years,
him.
14.
He was a bust last year at KU,
Yeah.
wasn't he?
Didn't live up to his money.
And you know what? If you care about women's sports, then you should want this to happen as soon as possible. Because here's what's going to come out of this, too. As football and basketball take all the money and suck up all the attention, Iowa State last week cut its women's gymnastics program. That will continue in major college sports. If you care about equality or equal opportunity in college athletics, which is something that, I think that people across the board seem to care about, then you've got to get this thing under control, because if not, all that's going to be left is football and basketball, because that's all these schools are going to be able to afford for the most part. So, I'm not going to sit here and say that Friday is like going to be the game changer of all game changers, and I really don't want the government all that involved, because usually they make things worse. But if it takes Trump and the feds combined with key leaders in college sports to try to turn the tide in college athletics and get things under control, which they're not right now, I'm game, because I don't know what else the answer is. The NCAA is a feckless operation that does nothing well outside of put on a basketball tournament every March. They have no teeth to anything that they do. There's no respect for them. So someone else has to come into power here. And if that's done in conjunction with the president, then so be it. I'm all ears. Because as we sit here on the verge of March Madness next week, Big 12 tournament this week, SEC tournament this week, I love it. But let's be honest, we all know that the entire operation is fractured. Now, speaking of sports here in Kansas City, did you see this report yesterday on Travis Kelce? Diana Rossini reporting here on Travis Kelce for The Athletic that he appears motivated to return to play for a 14th season. And then her report says the Chiefs remain very much in the mix to re-sign the three-time Super Bowl champion. Part of The Athletic reporting suggested that Kelce was going to maybe look elsewhere. Not that he was definitely going to leave, but that if he was going to come back and play next season, it's not like 100% that it would be here in Kansas City. I just find that impossible to believe. That Travis Kelce would come back next year and go play for who?
Mm-hmm.
The LA Rams?
Oh, no, it had linked him to Cleveland, the obvious. It's lazy journalism, isn't it? It's what this is.
Cleveland?
Yeah.
What's he going to go do? Win 3 games with the Browns because winning 6 in Kansas City wasn't bad enough?
And I saw an article by a Broncos fan, and they were getting all giddy, a la Neil Smith, Dale Carter. Could we? Would we? I'm like, oh, please.
No.
The New
Give me
York
a
Giants
break.
have been.
Oh, come on. Come on. You got to be kidding
I think
me.
it's all fake news.
That would be, listen, I know Travis has a lot more things going on in his life right now than just football and the Chiefs. But, man, I'll tell you what. If Travis Kelce is hell-bent on destroying his reputation, then go play for the Cleveland Browns or the New York Giants next year and see how that goes for you and your legacy. We see these guys make these mistakes all the time. I'd like to think Travis wouldn't make them, because what's he negotiating for? Another $5 million? Bro, your fiance's a billionaire. It's going to be okay. All right, you're flying every private jet in the world that you want for the rest of your life. And if it's all about, I want the best opportunity to win, I have not heard any of those teams that you just listed there, fellas, as teams that are going to be winning anytime soon.
He's got no reason to leave for winning or a ring
No.
or blah, blah, blah. And
No.
he knows what the money's going to be approximately.
Exactly.
Surely.
And if you're nickel and diming another $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, then, boy, your priorities are way more out of whack than I realized. Coming up, we've got Bill O'Reilly at 8:05 on KCMO, and much more to get to here on
Opening up a new
95.7 FM.
amphitheater for a Kelce jam. Too,
Oh,
by
yeah,
the way.
that's
So,
right. That's right. That's right.
Make some money there.
Yeah, sure, man. Do the old Kelce Jam at Morton Amphitheater. Have a great time doing it. The good, the bad, and the ugly is next, and then it's Bill O'Reilly at 8:05.
Vince Colonnese here, and I'm coming up at 11 after Kevin Keatsman on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
15 minutes away from Bill O'Reilly joining the show. Week 2 of Operation Epic Fury is underway. Bill O'Reilly will break all that down and much more, along with a special announcement just after 8:15 towards the end of our conversation. It's that time of the week. Let's do it.
It's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, on Friday afternoon, we used the opportunity, Kate and I did, to go check out the Titanic exhibit down at Union Station. And I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I was intrigued by it. And it's been down there for, a few months. It's here until April 19th is when it leaves Kansas City. But, I wanted to do it. We were both interested in doing it. And we finally said, okay, we'll do it on Friday. It was not good and would not have been good for the little kids. So my parents were in town, so we took the advantage to go down there on Friday late afternoon. And it was great. It was really well done. I wasn't sure at first because I was like, man, I mean, is this going to be all it's hyped up to be? And in the first 5 minutes, I was underwhelmed. But as it went on and on and on and on, and they had, real life artifacts and great 3D technology and outstanding stories and a ton of history around the Titanic, I was like, you know what? When we got done, that was worth it. That was worth the $28 a person. Not cheap, but that was well worth the $28 a pop down at Union Station to go through the exhibit. And I'll give you there's one thing that I took a photo of that I wanted to share here. This is just amazing. When, you look back on these tragedies, there's always a million things that go wrong, combined with oversized egos, overconfidence, all these different things, right? This is amazing. I didn't know this about the Titanic. So the captain, E.J. Smith, was the company's most senior official for the White Star Fleet. This was going to be his final voyage. He was going to retire after he led the Titanic. So he had 9 other officers under his command. A shakeup in the Titanic's crew occurred very close to sailing day. They decided to add a senior officer to aid E.J. Smith as the chief officer. All right? So they bring on this extra guy to kind of be the right-hand man to Captain Smith. What did that mean? There was a reshuffling, right? Several officers had to drop a rank in their duties, with the exception of one guy, David Blair. Blair's immense experience did not warrant demoting him to the rank of third officer from second officer. So instead, this guy gets removed from the voyage on the Titanic altogether. As this guy, David Blair, departs the ship, what did he do? He mistakenly took a locker key belonging to the Titanic. That key that he accidentally took secured the lookout's binoculars that were often used when scanning the sea for obstacles. You can't make that up. That is unbelievable. And not saying that if the binoculars were there that they would have avoided the iceberg in the middle of the Atlantic, but it's just another one of those things that makes you say, what if, on one of the, greatest tragedies of the last century. And unexpected tragedies of the last century as well. So go check it out. You got about 5-6 weeks to go down there to Union Station to see the Titanic exhibit. Well worth your time. Kids probably have to be, 7, 8, 9 to really understand it and get something out of it. So just a little FYI on that front. The bad from the weekend came from Jesse Jackson's funeral. And not that there was anything wrong with the funeral itself. I actually saw Jesse Jackson's son come out and say, please don't make this political. And then everyone gets up there and makes it political. Obama's making it political because he can't help himself. And then they roll out some other guy who referred to Kamala Harris as the president of the United States, and the place goes wild. I mean, Jesse Jackson's own kid is like, don't make this political, please. And everybody who gets in front of a microphone makes it political. Everybody. And then what do you get to? And this is why I'm putting this in the bad, because I just couldn't help myself here. You get Joe Biden speaking, and he has one of his great Joe Biden-isms. Here's what he had to say. at Jesse Jackson's funeral over the weekend. Let's roll the tape and roll the clip there. Okay, here we go. This is Joe Biden trying to relate to Jesse Jackson's crowd at the funeral of the late Reverend. Here we go.
By the way, you know, the continent of Africa is going to be the largest continent in the world in terms of population by the year 2050, the largest in the entire world. Watch, man. Watch. By the way, you know.
What? By the way, you know, the continent of Africa is going to be the largest continent in the world in terms of population by the year 2050. Is Africa growing in landmass and I'm not aware of that? Is that happening? I thought everything was shrinking because of global warming. I mean, what is he going? What is Joe Biden going for here? And if he's talking about pure population, what kind of pandering is that? I mean, these people are all Americans. I'm not sure what Africa has to do with anything right now. But this was just, I mean, the guy's got to go find the retirement home. He really does. Enough's enough. What does that have to do? I mean, talking to a room full of obviously mostly black Americans. What does the size of Africa have to do with anything in that moment when you're Joe Biden? Man, that was just, it was so cringe on so many levels.
You have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
But, you know, Joe's no stranger to awkward, uncomfortable moments. We know that much. The ugly from the weekend. Well, the teenager who was involved with the Chiefs Super Bowl parade shooting was back in the news over the weekend. Asir McKinnon was 16 years old at the time of the rally shooting, and at the time he was dealt with in family court as a juvenile. Well, in an incident dating back to last month, he was accused of robbing someone at gunpoint at a Kansas City gas station, and he's now facing serious felony charges. The same teen who fired a gun during the Super Bowl rally more than 2 years ago is now 18 and behind bars in Jackson County, charged with 2 violent felonies, including first-degree robbery, after investigators say he robbed a man at gunpoint at a gas station on Troost Avenue less than 2 weeks ago. That is why the juvenile court system is so broken on so many levels. Because when you slap people on the wrist, you know what? They typically do not, unfortunately, learn their lesson, at least not frequently enough. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly from the weekend. Bill O'Reilly is next on KCMO, and you can stream it at kcmotalkradio.com or on the app. Well, we're in week 2 of Operation Epic Fury, unleashed by the Trump administration against Iran. We are seeing news this morning that oil prices continue to increase. Of course, you had Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, on 60 Minutes last night. Bill O'Reilly is here on KCMO. You hear his morning update every morning at 7:15. You hear, of course, the No Spin News, 8 p.m. on KCMO Talk Radio. And he's got all the action going also at BillO'Reilly.com. Get over there. Check it out right now. Bill, as we start week 2, what is the most intriguing storyline you're watching this week in Operation Epic Fury?
The effect on the economy, not just America, but worldwide. So if you got a doubling in oil prices, it's even more than that. Everybody's going to suffer, all the consumers all over the world. And so in America, we have people who are willing to tough it out, but also people don't want any inconvenience at all. And that becomes a political issue for President Trump. So this morning, Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, said you got to start releasing the reserves, the oil reserves. That is actually a smart move. And I believe it will happen, because Americans are very concerned about their wallets, and they don't want to hear a lot of theory about what Iran could or could not do. They are impatient with this whole process.
So with that being the case, then, how much political capital does President Trump have to work with here, knowing he may be doing the right thing? But to your point, if people are just seeing their gas prices going up and not really understanding all the madness in the Middle East and saying we've tried this before, it never really works, how much political capital is the president potentially going to use up in this process, and is that ultimately worth it?
Well, if oil prices don't come down, and I believe they will come down, but if they don't, it's over for the Republican Party. They'll lose both houses in November, because the oil prices go to food, cost more to transport the food to the grocery stores, goes to your airline tickets. Airline tickets will go through the roof now. And it goes to your heating and cooling of your house. It's across the board. So inflation will go up, and people's resources will go down. And then millions of Americans go, was this worth it? And the answer will be no. So it's a huge gamble on the part of President Trump.
So with that being the case then, Bill, I'm sure he thought this through before they went ahead with this. Do you think there is any, as we enter week 2, buyer's remorse early on, or do you think they anticipated this and they just believe they can get this whole thing accomplished in a few weeks and settle the gas prices down by, let's say, mid to late spring?
I think it's the latter. Heg said last night on 60 Minutes is pretty cocky, I would say. Not as arrogant as sometimes he gets. I thought it was an okay interview that he did with Major Garrett, and Garrett was very good. But the Trump administration believes that Iran will fold in the next 2 weeks or so, and that as soon as that happens, everything will turn around very quickly to the president's favor. Now, as you know, Mundo, people believe what they want to believe. But this is an enormous calculation on the part of President Trump. And I don't know of any other president in my lifetime who would have done this. Not one. I mean, he's bold. There's no doubt about it.
How long is it going to take, Bill, for us to learn as to whether or not this was the right call and the right move for not just the United States, but the world? Are we going to be talking about this? I mean, is it years, decades down the road, or do you think it will be pretty evident here in the next few months as to whether or not this was the right call?
No, if Iran capitulates, and there's a good chance it will, and you'll see that by they signal they want some negotiations. Once you hear the word negotiations, that means that Iran's waving the white flag. And Trump would say, okay, and then they'd meet somewhere, and then Iran would have to surrender. What does that mean? They'd have to change their government. the kid or the son who's the new appointed leader, he's not going to last. They put a civilian leadership in there, not a theocracy. And they'd have to allow weapons inspectors in to make sure they destroy all their nukes and ballistics. That's what Trump wants, unconditional surrender. He thinks he's going to get it with light casualties on a part of the USA. Now, these people who are whipping up that we're going to send infantry in there, they're lying. That's not going to happen. Trump will never do that because that would be the end of his administration. If he did that, Americans would not support that.
Now, what about the issues here back in the United States? I mean, we've had some, seem to be fake threats that have come into airports at airlines across the country. We had an issue here yesterday at the Kansas City airport that thankfully turned out to be nothing. How much faith should there be in whether it's the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, whether it's the FBI and Kash Patel's team there? How much confidence do you think Americans should have right now in them doing their jobs domestically, given what's going on overseas?
It's always possible that some terrorists will do something, and you can't guarantee anything like that. I'm more concerned about the collapse of airport screening.
Yeah.
We're getting reports out in Houston over the weekend. People had to wait online for 3 hours before they got through the screening. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. You see, that's another thing. It's hard to evaluate these reports because so many of them are false. But if that happens, if airline travel is paralyzed, that's just another brick in the wall for Trump. And so he's busy in D.C. You got to watch a lot of fronts because Americans do not have a high tolerance for pain. We are a leisurely people, Mundo.
Yep. Ain't that the truth? Bill O'Reilly's here on KCMO. So, Bill, then what about this? We've got this temporary shutdown going on, or this partial shutdown going on with DHS. TSA is not currently being paid. The TSA came out yesterday and blamed the Democrats for the shutdown, but it's all finger pointing right now. So who's winning right now as this partial shutdown carries on for another couple of weeks potentially?
Nobody's winning now because it's still undetermined. It's like a football game at the end of the first quarter that's tied 14-14. Nobody's winning. So it's going to dovetail back if Iran capitulates and that becomes a neutral nation, then Trump gets a big win and everything spirals back to the way it used to be. And the Democrats will suffer for it. But if the converse is true, Trump will suffer for it. It's kind of a, place your bets now type thing. But, Trump is doing the right thing in the sense that Iran is so bad. And if you read my book, Confronting Evil, I can't lay it out any more stark than that. I can't. And if they're going to continue to work on their nuclear weapons, which they are, and you look away from that, then you're going to have an armed theocracy that will kill Israel. Israel would be the main target of it. So it's complicated, but Iran deserves all of this. They are bad. That government is horrible. And so Trump's doing the right thing, but it may not turn out to be the smart thing. So Bush did the right thing in Iraq by removing Saddam Hussein. That was the right thing to do, but he didn't do it the smart way because there were far too many U.S. casualties there.
Is there someone right now, Bill, knowing the administration like you do, that has the largest say, has the ear of the president on these big decisions, or is it always with the president just his gut after he gathers all the information possible?
Well, Secretary of State Rubio has a lot of sway right now. And the Joint Chiefs of Staff have a lot of say. So it's not just Trump sitting there doing what he wants to do. These guys, they have intense briefings every morning. They're telling them what it's called sitcom is. And then Trump listens to Rubio, trusts Rubio now. And that's the way it goes down.
Is Rubio becoming the star of this administration in your estimation?
Yes, but it goes week to week. So, but Rubio has distinguished himself more than any of the others have, by a large margin. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Hegseth is okay in the sense that he's carrying out the orders, and he was fairly articulate last night, as I mentioned. But Rubio's the thinker. Hegseth's not the thinker.
Yeah.
And now Trump's going to give Rubio Cuba, which should collapse any time. And Rubio's Cuban, has a emotion invested in that island. So at this point in history, Rubio, I think, is the most powerful cabinet member in the Trump administration.
You wrote this in your weekly column yesterday, Bill, Empowering Trump, and you write here President Trump's enemies are helpless or are helping him immensely. You say the Democrat Party's so discombobulated and leaderless that the president's able to do pretty much whatever he wants without restraint. Only the Supreme Court can delay his agenda. So we just talked about how Operation Epic Fury could have an impact on these midterms. What about the Democratic Party and their self-inflicted wounds and what they could do to help the president here coming up in November?
Well, the Democratic Party is not going to be able to reorganize in time for the midterm vote because there's no leader. And so they're going to continue to do crazy things that Americans are appalled by. So the Voter ID Act is an 80% approval, but they oppose it. And I mean, it's crazy. And the sanctuary cities and all of this stuff. So it'll be a Trump up or down vote. The Democrats aren't going to contribute anything because they don't have anything to contribute. There's no problem-solving mechanism in the entire party. So it's up or down on Trump. But Trump could lose that if the economy is punishing American workers. Trump would very well lose. Mm-hmm. But it won't matter what the Democrats say.
Yeah. Bill, I'll let you out of here with this. It was just rolled out in the last couple of minutes that you have a new weekly podcast called We'll Do It Live. That is, for those who are Bill O'Reilly longtime fans, of course, referencing one of the great viral clips from Bill O'Reilly's early career, a bold, fresh presentation from Bill O'Reilly. So, Bill, you got the weekly podcast, just got announced here in the last couple of minutes. What's the plan for the show?
Well, number one, that's not my title, but there was a mutiny on my staff saying, no, that we have to use that. Because that was some dumb thing that I did when I was like 12 years old. We'll do it live. And then I threw in a few F-bombs because people weren't doing their jobs. It was pretty funny, but they're mocking me. My own staff is mocking me, and there's nothing I can do about it. We're rolling it out slowly because people like the long form now. We'll still do the hard news, the no-spin news, but I'm going to take an hour a week and bring in people that you wouldn't ordinarily know much about and show you what their profile is. And it's modeled along the old Mike Wallace show, Night Beat, which nobody remembers. It was in the 1950s, where Wallace made his name as a tough guy interviewer. I'm not going to be that tough guy, but I'm going to be provocative in my interview style. It's not going to be guys sitting around smoking pot in sweatshirts. I mean, we're not doing that, okay? But I think people will enjoy it, and if they don't, then we'll dump it. If they like it, then we'll continue it. It's capitalism at its finest.
That's great. Well, I can't wait. Rob Schneider's the first guest. Bill O'Reilly's new weekly podcast just announced. We'll do it live. Bill, great stuff. Can't wait for it. And we will talk to you soon here in Kansas City. Thanks as always for the time.
Thanks for having me on, Pete.
There you go. Bill O'Reilly. Great to have him on the show. Always appreciate him joining us on 95.7 FM. That's a great time. I mean, you got to love that. You got to love that. I love how he said back when I was 12 years old. Here it is from his early career. This has got to be going back 30-plus years.
We'll do it live. F***ing thing sucks.
Oh, man, that is so good. I think that's probably got to be 35 years old at this point. I mean, he started at Fox 30 years ago. It was pre-Fox. Oh, that's outstanding work. I love that. 913-408-7957. Great conversation with Bill O'Reilly here on KCMO Talk Radio. We'll get to you, your reaction, and I may give you my most unpopular take of the week in 10 minutes here on KCMO.
From Lenexa to Lee Summit, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Bill O'Reilly is right, though, that, if gas prices start to skyrocket this year and they don't quickly come back down based on what's going on overseas, Republicans are screwed. They're toast. He's right about that. But we did see, it's been a roller coaster here over the last 12 hours. So the market futures opened up last night, and oil went from $91 to $110 a barrel. Then it peaked at about midnight last night at about $116 a barrel. But now we're back down to $99.30 a barrel. So it's down almost 20% in the last, 8 hours. So it's a roller coaster ride. Now this morning, Mark, always looking for some action, wanted to place a bet on the oil's futures. So what is this? What did you do this morning? What kind of trouble are you trying to get yourself into here, Mark? You couldn't wait for a Sunbelt game this afternoon or something to make a bet?
So this is a brand new thing with FanDuel. It's called Futures and Predicts. Sorry, FanDuel Predicts. And it's a new thing. It just started, I think, in the last week. And so I got a free $25 to use on whatever futures I want. And on Friday, when I first got into it, there's only 2 things I could do. And now it's kind of all over the place. I can get in on crude oil, what it's going to look like at 9 a.m. Central. I could do 10 a.m. Central. You can go by the hour. So it's kind of, this is too much for me. I'm just doing one bet here. That's it.
You did a bet at like 6 o'clock when we started the show on whether or not the price of a barrel of oil would be over $100 by 9 o'clock this morning.
That's right.
And you bet the over.
I did. And it was looking good until about 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, yes, you're right. At about 8 o'clock this morning, it was still hovering at about $102 a barrel. We're now down to $99.53. So you got 33 minutes, Mark, to get that thing over $100 a barrel. Do you know any big whales who can go buy a bunch of oil right now and drive it over a hundo?
I don't, sadly.
Well, that's how you got to play the game, Mark.
Yeah.
I
need an insider.
Where's Peter Maluk when we need him? He was just on the show on Friday from Creative Planning. We got to get him on board here. Buy a bunch of oil to help Mark out with his $25 bet that he made at 6 a.m. on a barrel of oil being over $100. Oh, my goodness. Unbelievable. But, on a serious note, if this oil price does stay high, then Bill O'Reilly is right. It's going to be an ugly, ugly November, but it might also be very temperamental. If the Strait of Hormuz reopens up here in the next, few days, couple of weeks, that oil starts getting out of there, that's going to ease the global market, which is going to help everybody. Coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, I will give you, I would call it my least popular take of maybe the week, and then Esther George at 9:05.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO.
I can't stand it. I just can't stand it. We sprung forward, and I don't like it. I know many of you are cheering today. You lost an hour of sleep yesterday, but you don't care. The days are supposedly longer. No, they're not. They're just later, to be very clear. Okay? I have done a total 180 on this. And I don't know if it's lifestyle. I don't know if it's parenthood. I don't know what it is. But I used to be a fan of daylight saving time. Now I can't stand it. I am an advocate of permanent standard time, meaning a world where we never move the clocks forward. No, the opposite of what a lot of people are lobbying for right now. You've had a lot of politicians over the last 24 hours say, we have moved the clocks forward and we should never move them back again. We should never fall back again. No, I think we should fall back and never move the clock forward ever again, John.
I realize now I don't like the change. I don't know which side I'm on. I'm trying to decide if I agree with you or whether I want this, but I'm tired of changing it.
I agree with you there. All right.
So we're on the halfway there.
You're almost. I'm almost.
I think I'm
almost
with you.
there.
Where I'd rather go with this. Just leave standard time alone.
Leave standard time alone, especially here in Kansas City. Okay. So when we get to late June, it's going to be light out until after 9 o'clock. Mm-hmm. We'll have the sun setting at officially like 8:50 ish. But you know and I know it's going to be light here till after 9 o'clock. Can you tell me why we need that? What, you got to play, what do you have to play, 36 holes of golf? Like, why? Why do we need that? There is plenty of data that suggests all daylight saving time does is basically make people stay up later, which means they don't get as much sleep, which means they are less healthy. And if there's one issue we have right now above everything else in this country, it's really bad health. It's obesity rates. It's all those different things that we talk about within the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again. And we move the clocks forward artificially to force people to stay up later to do what? For what purpose? Now, here in Kansas City, if we had permanent standard time, the sun would still be up until after 8 o'clock most nights, and then the sun would be rising at about 5 a.m. Now, I can't have the sun rising that early. Well, why not? How much more productive would we be as a society if people were getting up a little bit earlier and going to bed earlier? We'd be better off. It'd be healthier for us. Our bodies would be better off. And we wouldn't have this joke of basically artificially changing clocks for some reason that I can't comprehend unless it really is just about the golf industry. And I golf, and I'm saying it doesn't matter to me, and that should not be a determining factor here.
It's interesting that we're all experts on why it happened and when it happened, of course, but one of the notions was to increase our ability to exercise and have more recreation. I will counter that when I was younger, you had incandescent bulbs. Everything's lit up. So the whole thing of having extra daylight to get more recreation is ridiculous now.
If you're going to exercise, you're going to exercise.
Right.
Okay? You're going to find the time. Don't tell me, I got to wait till it's 8 p.m. I like to go for that run when the sun's coming down.
There was only Jack LaLanne for the boomers towing a boat across the bay, so we didn't have that workout notion per se. We actually participated in games and events.
Yeah, what a novel concept.
Up to that point. Yeah, but like I'm saying, everything's lit up nowadays, so it's you can play ball till midnight anyway, right?
Here's some of the history on this that I want to share with you. A lot of people don't realize that standard time was year-round until 1918, when during World War I, the practice of springing forward was introduced as allegedly an energy-saving measure. That ended shortly after the war, but then was temporarily reinstated during World War II. And then it was codified when Congress passed the Uniform Time Act of 1966. Now, fast forward, and in 1974, Washington launched a 2-year-long experiment with permanent daylight saving time. That means the clocks were permanently sprung forward. Now, some of you probably remember this. I was not alive for it. Do you have any memory of this, John, or no?
I just think, no. I mean, I'm like 14, I guess. 74, I'm 14, 15.
Okay.
The world just goes by me then, I guess.
So here's what happened. When the change initially took place in 1974 with permanent springing forward time, daylight saving time, everyone loved it. 79% of the public was in favor of it. What happened, though? Its popularity tumbled, and they ended the experiment after 10 months. There were several pre-dawn accidents that killed or injured several school children. And the experiment ended October of 1974. It was dubbed in 1974 Daylight Disaster Time is what it got called. But now, 50 plus years later, it's coming back around. What's old is new again. Politicians are like, we got to go on permanent daylight saving time. No, we don't. That is not the answer. And by the way, it's not even clear that if states wanted to do this on their own, they could even do it. It's believed that legally, the 1966 statute would have to be amended or repealed to potentially give states the ability to do this on their own. States are allowed to remain on permanent standard time, but they cannot, it's believed by some of the things I was reading over the weekend, go to permanent daylight saving time on their own without Congress potentially helping here.
My mom and dad live in Arizona, so now we're 2 hours ahead of them. They don't like that so much. They only like being an hour away from us. So now we're 2 hours behind.
Now they're
Indiana was always like that.
Yes.
It's a little rough for calling the grandkids on FaceTime at night.
Yeah, it is. But they'll get adjusted, Mark. It's going to be all right. You're going to be okay. But you're right about that. Obviously, some states are better than others.
Meanwhile, Woody knows when it's time to eat, right?
Yeah.
My cats. I already had the argument yesterday.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So I am all in as a permanent standard time guy. I never felt this way until like the last 12 months when I've really become radicalized on this issue. And I think that I'm kind of on an island here, but I will continue to advocate for permanent standard time. There's a bill in Missouri to try to make permanent daylight saving time a thing. Once again, it's debatable legally as to whether or not they can even do that. But I hope that thing dies a quick and swift death. Could you imagine doing the show, by the way, with Kansas at one time and Missouri at another time? When do I start the show? What do I do? 6 a.m. Missouri time or 6 a.m. Kansas time?
Make sure you say the digital time. It's 8:41. It's 29 minutes before?
19?
Yeah. Supposed to say that both ways. That would be ridiculous.
8:41 in Kansas, 7:41 in Missouri. Good morning on KCMO Talk Radio. That'll be a fantastic way to do this show. So not that thing is going anywhere in Missouri, but I hope that it doesn't even sniff the floor in the House or the Senate. I don't even want to see that thing come anywhere close to being debated in Jeff City this session.
Got a few other things that need to be done.
Yeah, well, that's a good point as well. That's a good point. On the text line, Pete, split the difference, make it 30 minutes, leave it alone. So that's what Florida is trying to do. Florida is trying to split the baby, set the clocks ahead by 30 minutes for good. That has been a push. They're calling it half DST. But that would create a whole nother slew of issues. Imagine you're in Florida, it's 8:30, then you cross into Georgia, and it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, whichever way they go. That's a mess.
I set mine before I go to bed, so that way I don't have to mess with it when I get up, so there's a psychological advantage there. But I like the meme that says, why don't we do it Monday at 4 and bump the clock to 5?
That's a good point.
Then we might be more for it.
Or Friday. Could you imagine that happy hour?
Yeah, sure.
My goodness, that would be a great time. That would be a lot of fun. So there's a lot of research out there on what a mess permanent daylight saving time is. I'm going to go off on this and share a bunch of those links on my social media today, just at a protest for this nonsense of springing the clocks forward. I am so against it and so not a fan, and especially in Kansas City. I think this push basically comes from the Northeast, where in New York they sit in the dark all day, and Boston and to a lesser extent D.C., but we've got it pretty good in Kansas City. If we go on permanent standard time, you know what? We're still getting that sun until about 8 p.m. in the summertime. We're still getting plenty of it. But in the winter time, if we go to permanent daylight saving time, our sunrise is not happening until after 8 a.m. in the dead of winter. That is not a healthy situation for kids getting on school buses And all it does is delay people getting up and getting after it every single day. So count me out if you're just looking at it from a Kansas City perspective and not even looking at the rest of the country. Permanent standard time is undoubtedly the play. 913-408-7957. All right, I got some agreement on the text line. But boy, those people against me, they are against me. I mean, I think I just totally lost them. Oh, my goodness gracious. Pete, what we have right now is perfect. Longer evenings are better. With a 7:30 sunset, I can grill after I get home from work without a headlamp. Go buy a headlamp. I'm sorry. I'm not making decisions like this based on whether or not you want a headlamp to go grill in mid-March. No, we're not doing that. No, that's not how these decisions are made. No way. Hanging outside with neighbors until 8:30 at 9 in the summer is glorious. Okay, but is that the healthiest thing for a country that's incredibly unhealthy right now? I don't think so. And no one says you can't still hang outside when it's dark out. What's the big deal? Got the fire pit going? Why does it have to be light out? Someone tell me why you can't hang out with your neighbors after the sun sets. We'll get to Esther George. She is the former chair of the Kansas City Federal Reserve at 9:05. Great conversation coming up with her about the economy, specific to Kansas City, what makes this economy unique. And I've got to ask her about the abolish the Fed thing because that always comes up. And I've never had a chance to talk to somebody this high up with ties to the Fed. So do not miss Esther George coming up at 9:05 on KCMO.
from Leawood to Liberty. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Spare me the longer days. The days don't get longer. You're just shifting the days with daylight saving time. That's all you're doing. Rick is on KCMO. What's up, Rick? Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Pete. I grew up in northwest Indiana, and Indiana didn't used to change their time with the country. I think they do now. But anyway, the top three counties along Lake Michigan there were on Central Time with Chicago, and the rest of the state also was on Eastern Time. So you mentioned something about if Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas were on opposites. Well, if you kind of grow up with it, the worst thing that can happen to you is stores closed when you go outside the county that's on Chicago time.
Well, hold on a second, though. I don't know, Indiana all that well. I've only driven through it. But let's say you've got Kansas kids going to Rockhurst. How would that work, right? Literally, you have Kansas kids who are dealing with a different time than Missouri is, where Rockhurst is located right on State Line Road. I think it's one thing to say there are counties in northwest Indiana that may not do that, play the, time shift, time fall back game, but it's different when it's literally in the middle of a major metropolitan area.
Well, the three counties that were on Central Time were in the Chicago metro area, and there was a lot of people traveling back and forth for work and everything else.
Yeah, but those in northwest Indiana, like you said, they were suburbs of Chicago. So as long as they were on Chicago time, it probably was okay because that's where most of their business was, right?
Oh, yeah, true.
Right? Does that make sense?
True.
Okay. All right, good deal.
A late night run to the liquor store, though, on the other side of the county line could end up in disappointment.
Well, that may not be the worst thing in the world, okay? You got to wait till the morning. Daryl, what's up, Daryl?
Hey, Pete. Yeah, they need to leave the clocks alone. Just like I'm with you. To set them back and leave them there, I mean, it just messes up my medicine times, and it just. That sun's going to come up and down no matter how you look at it.
That's exactly right there, Daryl. And I definitely, the icing on the cake is I don't want to screw up your medicine times.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, the wife gets a little bitchy, too, so it changes something somewhere.
Oh, okay. All right, Daryl. I think that's more about you than it is the clocks.
Well, that could be, too. That very well could be, too. I can't argue the point when you're totally right.
Oh, man. All right. Here's the thing. And just, one final note on this. Here's the other rub with daylight saving time. You concentrate sun exposure in the evening where literally nothing is happening compared to the morning when you are far more likely to be productive. I'm going to share this right now. The study and the publication has been done and researched on this front that shows you are far more likely to be productive in the morning when if you were just on permanent standard time, you would have more sunlight. To get out there, get that sunshine, whatever it is, exercise, do all those things that you would otherwise do instead of staying up too late, waking up later as a result, feeling groggy, and then being like, well, at least I get the sun until 9 o'clock tonight. It's not really good or healthy for anybody, so why are we doing it? That's all I got. That's it. I'm done. Rant over. Okay? We good, John?
That sounds perfectly reasonable. We're likely to be more productive in the morning. Keep it on standard time when the daylight hours are more in the morning.
Exactly right.
I'll buy that.
All right. That's all I got for you on the clock springing forward. I am no longer a fan despite loving it as a young adult. Now I'm done. Over it. On top of the fact that the kids are just a mess for a couple of days. I won't even go there. But then if I do that, that's not really a good argument because that's just me. That's like Daryl saying, oh, my wife's not nice to me and, my medicine gets thrown off. No, I'm not going to make it. I want to stick to the data, and that's the data behind it. 913-408-7957 is our text line and our studio line here on KCMO Talk Radio. So this Travis Kelce story, I don't get it. The Athletic had a report yesterday that said Travis Kelce appears to be preparing to return for a 14th season. That's great. However, in the Athletic report, what it noted is that Kelce is not necessarily a lock to play for the Chiefs if he comes back next year, that he will at least explore his options. Now, I don't know if that's coming from agents trying to get leverage. That's the only thing I could think of when I see a report like that. But if Travis Kelce is foolish enough to end his career next year somewhere other than Kansas City, he deserves everything coming his way on like a 3-win Cleveland Browns team or something like that, John.
The other news is subscription platform is seeking hits.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
The Athletic, please.
Come on. Are you buying this, Mark?
I'm not buying it, but Chiefs, please don't quabble over $2 million. Like,
it's not that.
If it's $12 million or $10 million, just give them $12 million.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I agree.
Can you imagine how sad it is that you have to think, hey, we might get Travis Kelce on his 14th year?
Yeah, I know. Like,
that's kind of a bad state for your franchise if that's your biggest news.
Who's even doing that? I mean, the guy's not worth 15 to 20 mil. He's not. Yeah, I mean, 10, 12, whatever, that's fine. But also, when your wife's Taylor Swift and a billionaire, I mean, let's not haggle over a couple $1,000,000 here, okay? Let's not do that. Esther George is the former chair of the Kansas City Federal Reserve. And she's going to be here for a conversation on this economy in Kansas City and what makes it unique, and also the Fed in general, all coming up next. Well, it's a Monday morning across Kansas City, and tomorrow there's a great event being put on by American Public Square at the National World War I Museum and Memorial. It's being put on by American Public Square, and the headline is, "Why is everything so expensive?" And one of the attendees on the panel, I've done events for him before, is Esther George. She was the head of the Kansas City Fed from 2011 to 2023. And it's a question that we ask every single day, especially for the last 5 years. So Esther's going to be on the board. The event is free tomorrow night. You can RSVP at AmericanPublicSquare.org. Esther, thank you for being here on KCMO Talk Radio. We appreciate the time. So why is everything so expensive? Let's start there.
It's the key question, Pete, and it's the one that we'll be tackling at this event because we have just come through an extraordinary experience of the pandemic, which produced high inflation. And Americans had not experienced this level of inflation in some 4 decades. Mm-hmm. So it's very relevant today. It continues to be an issue, whether you're buying milk, gasoline, or ordering something online. And it's right in front of us every day. So it's an important topic. It's one that I think people want to understand better. Whose fault is it? Mm-hmm. What can we do about it? And that's what we're going to tackle at this event.
So, listen, I mean, it came up in the presidential election and people are upset with prices. That was probably the main reason President Trump won. But people say, well, my prices are still high. The reality is any politician can say, I'm going to bring down your prices. You can't really bring them down, right? You can just slow the rate of how quickly they go up. And I think that probably gets lost in a lot of people. What's the new reality? Like with inflation, is 3% the new 2%, which was always a Fed goal, or what is it exactly?
Yeah, it's a great question because it is the job of the Federal Reserve. When Congress set up the central bank, which we call the Federal Reserve, its job was to make sure that we had stability in the economy, particularly around prices or inflation. And so the Fed has said 2% inflation we consider to be stable. Right now, inflation is growing at 3%. We've already seen a much higher level 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so, in part, it is the job of the Federal Reserve to make sure that they are calibrating interest rates so that inflation comes down.
So, like with that example, I mean, Jerome Powell's been in this tug of war where, the president wants lower rates, but at the same time, if they get too low, do you risk further inflation? Because then people are going to say, great, I got some cheap money to go get a car, but if now you're back to 4 or 5% inflation, no one's happy with that either. So how difficult, as someone who is chair of the Kansas City Fed, how difficult is that balancing act?
Well, it's critical in the long run, and that's always our challenge. We want that inflation rate to be low in the long run, but on any given day, and we're in a period right now, gasoline prices have spiked. Mm-hmm. So the Fed has to think about, will those be coming down in short order? Does it require us to react with an interest rate move or not? And they don't want to send the economy into a recession either. So it is always a balancing act of figuring out what is really an equilibrium or what is a normal rate of growth in the economy that requires the interest rate to stay steady and not unseat people's jobs or too much inflation.
Because people always say you don't want the Fed to be behind the curve, right? I mean, right. Is it fair to say the Fed was behind the curve 5 years ago a little bit?
So I think that has been the conclusion, that the Fed erred in its assumption that the inflation would be temporary. Or you remember the word they used was transitory.
Yes, the transitory inflation, yes.
And it turned out, while it did eventually come down, it required raising interest rates. It required those supply chains to get normalized again after that pandemic period. So it is an issue that the Fed has to face, which is how do we judge where the economy is? That was a mistake. They had to raise interest rates high. They've brought those down since then. Now the question is, do I bring them down further? Do I hold them where they are? Or will we have to raise them to squeeze out that last bit of inflation?
Without, of course, trying to impact the job market
Absolutely.
As well. And we saw these jobs numbers come out Friday. They were not good. So that's probably another layer that the Fed has to kind of weigh in all this that they're going ahead with. Esther George, former Kansas City Fed chair, is on KCMO. She will be a panelist on an event tomorrow night at the National World War I Museum and Memorial put on by American Public Square. The event is titled, "Why is Everything So Expensive?" It is at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Doors open at 5:30. Free events. RSVP now at AmericanPublicSquare.org. It will be well worth your time. So let's talk about Kansas City. When you were the Fed chair here, what is the relationship between you and the chair of the Federal Reserve, and what is that like?
Yes, so Kansas City is one of 12 regional Federal Reserve banks. 8 times a year, those 12 Federal Reserve Bank presidents join Jay Powell with the Board of Governors along with his 6 other colleagues and talk about the economy. And so you would have found me going to those meetings 8 times a year and talking about the region I served, which included Kansas City, understanding what drives the economy in Kansas City and how did I see that economy relative to the decision we had to make about national interest rates. So understanding the regional economy, understanding Kansas City was always critical as a starting point to making those larger decisions about interest rates.
So there's 12 of these around the country. Kansas City's not a top 12 market per se in the country. So how did we, I don't want to put you on the hot seat, but how did we land one of these as having one of the 12 in Kansas City?
Well, think about what Kansas City was more than 100 years ago when the central bank was being formed.
Okay, yeah.
We were, as you moved west, a really major area of commerce. And so when the organizing committee was saying, where should we put these banks? Obviously, a number of them in the Northeast where the population was. But they began to see, moving west, they put one in Kansas City because we were really important to commerce. We had Union Station. We were a major ag and transportation hub even then. So Kansas City is important, and today even continues to really be important relative to ag, to energy, to transportation in this part of the country.
What's the closest one to us? Dallas? Do they have one? Or
Dallas
Chicago?
has one, Minneapolis. The unique thing, you might learn this in trivia sometime, is St. Louis also has one of these regional banks. So the state of Missouri, the only one in the country, has 2 of these.
How about that? Is there any danger that we would lose one of them?
Well, that comes up from time to time.
Yeah.
Congress sits back and says, do we still need these 12 banks given how technology and transportation has changed? But the truth is these banks are representing the broad swath of the American population. So you think about the Kansas City Fed, 7 states that go as far west as Colorado and Wyoming and New Mexico, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri. You are really anchoring what is it the Fed does and how does it affect me in that really grassroots part of the country.
What's the next one to our west?
San Francisco.
Really? Okay, so we've got everything basically, those states you just noted are part of the Fed Bank here.
Absolutely. We do have a branch. Kansas City has 3 branches, which helps it do its work. So Denver has a branch office of the Kansas City Fed, Omaha and Oklahoma City. And they feed into that understanding of how is the regional economy working.
All right, so let's talk then about this regional economy. Before we got on the air, I mentioned to you, I said it feels like this economy does not have the peaks and the valleys of maybe, some of the coastal economies around the country. What's your assessment of that, and what is the why behind that?
Well, Kansas City often reflects in many ways the way the national economy is going. And that is because, by and large, while they have characteristics that can be different, as I said, we sit in a part of the country where ag is particularly important, transportation really important here. But it's a fairly diversified economy, too. So you have manufacturing, you have technology, you have the kinds of things that help buffer you against some of the extremes that can hit the economy. So Kansas City, by and large, is doing what we see the nation doing. It's growing. It is experiencing the same effects in terms of jobs. You hear this low hire, low fire. The Kansas City Fed contributes to something called the Beige Book. And it's really just a way to say, how do these 12 banks see their regional economies? And they roll that up to a picture of what does it mean for the economy as a whole. So Kansas City, an important indicator, but I think not outsized relative to the nation as a whole.
Do we have a more diverse economy than some of these other cities as well, where it's not as reliant on one sector?
That's always important. And I think Kansas City that is the case for us. We're diversified enough that, again, if something breaks in one part of the economy, we don't feel it in the same way. We have, again, manufacturing. The government sector is represented here in a large way. Healthcare is represented here. So there's enough diversity that I think we don't experience some of the highs and lows.
What are, at this point, our top, if you were to look at Kansas City as a regional economy, what are our top couple of industries that you look at right now and say, this is how you would define the Kansas City economy?
So one of the things I always looked at in my job was we're such an important transportation hub and logistics, both by where we sit physically, and we've taken advantage of that. You have rail, you have trucking, you have companies that are thinking about how goods move across the country. A really important economic indicator for us in watching how the economy's doing. So that's one of our important sectors. Healthcare is another one that you would see here. And of course, ag is dispersed throughout that in various ways, not just the production part of that, but you also see a lot of research and
yeah, I mean, everyone thinks everyone here is a farmer, like they're a rancher, but there's so much technology now in that space where people are maybe it's in 6 degrees of separation, but they're part of that economy in some way, shape, or form.
Always. It always surprises people. Ag is one of the most productive sectors of our economy, and that's been happening for a long period of time. What used to take a week to put a crop in, you can do now in a couple of hours.
That's a good point. Esther George, former chair of the Kansas City Fed, is on KCMO. So, I'm sure you've heard this conversation for 40 years now. When people say abolish the Fed, what do you say to that?
Well, that has been a slogan now and then. End the Fed, we don't need it. The truth is, we took a couple of runs at having a central bank in the United States. And the first two versions of that, the first Bank of the United States that Alexander Hamilton advocated for, didn't go past 20 years. The second iteration of that also, because it didn't win the public's trust. People mistrusted that concentrated power. This version of the Fed, we were talking about its decentralized nature, the fact that you have those 12 regional banks spread across the country, is designed to really put a face on the work this institution does. And so it's an important institution in terms of the economic stability. Congress put it in place. Congress sets its goals. The Fed is not out there. When you hear the Fed's independent, it's sort of a misnomer. The Fed needs to make decisions for the long run, but it is Congress that actually gives it its authority. And its authority has been, you need to make sure the economy is stable and that we have as much employment as we can get. And those are the two really core jobs of the Fed.
How about, when you think about tomorrow night, you're going to be a part of this panel at the National World War I Museum and Memorial, free event put on by American Public Square. What do you want to impart to people that are showing up tomorrow night as you unpack some of the economic pressures that are out there right now, the cost of living, and what solutions there might be?
I think it's such an important conversation because, again, everyone feels the impact of inflation. It does fall on some people more heavily than others. So if you are spending 90% of your income on basics, I've got to have gas to get to work, I've got childcare, I've got groceries, you carry a disproportionate amount of that burden compared to some who inflation can be an annoyance, but they are going to continue to spend. And so it causes people to say, whose fault is this and what can be done about it? And that's why bringing a panel of experts together for this event, I hope, will let people hear this isn't so much a political story, although politicians are trying to solve for it and they have different ways to approach it. But I hope it helps the public understand what are the sources of that and what can be done about inflation when you have an uneven impact of that across the consumers and households in this country.
Well, have a great time tomorrow night. American Public Square puts on a really good show, and we appreciate you being here, Esther George. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Pete.
All right. Esther George, former chair of the Kansas City Fed on KCMO Talk Radio. RSVP right now for the free event tomorrow night at the National World War I Museum and Memorial. Why is everything so expensive at AmericanPublicSquare.org? Definitely want to check that out. 913-408-7957. Secretary of State Marco Rubio just made some comments here in the last few minutes. An update on Operation Epic Fury. What did the Secretary of State say? We'll share some of that next here on KCMO.
From Gladstone to Gardner, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Marco Rubio gave an update here in the last 30 minutes or so on what's going on with Iran as Operation Epic Fury goes into a second week. Here was the Secretary of State who, as Bill O'Reilly told us last hour, and I agree with him, I think he is becoming the star of the administration. Now, if this whole Operation Epic Fury becomes a nightmare, then he's done. It's over. And by the way, so is J.D. Vance. I mean, J.D. Vance is indirectly tied to this whole thing as well, politically speaking. We can save that for another day. But here's Marco Rubio 30 minutes ago.
This mission are clear, and it's important to continue to remind the American people of why it is that the greatest military in the history of the world is engaged in this operation. It is to destroy the ability of this regime to launch missiles, both by destroying their missiles and their launchers, destroy the factories that make these missiles, and destroy their Navy. I think we are all seeing right now the threat that this clerical regime poses to the region and to the world. They are trying to hold the world hostage. They are attacking their neighbors. They are attacking neighboring countries, their energy infrastructure, their civilian population. They're attacking embassies. This is a terrorist government. This is a terroristic regime. And we are seeing them conduct terrorism using nation-state elements, using weapons like missiles and one-way attack drones. And the objective of this mission is to destroy their ability to continue to do that. And we are well on our way to achieving that objective every single day with overwhelming force, with overwhelming precision. The military, the United States military, the men and women in uniform are conducting an extraordinary operation. There are not a lot of cameras down there covering what they're doing, as opposed to some of the other images that you may see from some of the cities and capitals nearby. But I want everyone to know your military is getting the job done. And every single day, this regime in Iran has less missiles, has less launchers, their factories work less, and their Navy is being eviscerated. And the world is going to be a safer and a better place when this mission is accomplished. And we...
Okay.
Now, we are here today, obviously, on something that touches right on Iran. But
all that is true for Marco Rubio. I mean, there's no doubt. It's rah, rah America, supporting the men and women who are obviously pulling off and putting themselves in harm's way during Operation Epic Fury. I'm on board with, obviously, everything that the Secretary of State just had to say right there. But there are hundreds of millions of Americans who are going to say, yeah, those guys in Iran were really bad. I'm not upset that they're dead. However, if I'm paying $4 a gallon for gasoline right now, what's in it for me? And with oil prices sitting at about $100 a barrel this morning, they jumped last night to about $116 a barrel, then came down before the markets opened up, right now hovering at about that $100 mark. There are going to be a lot of people obviously wondering, what does this mean for gas prices? That's part of what we talked to Bill O'Reilly about last hour as it relates to what the economic impact of all this is going to be and how that can potentially play out going forward in the midterms in particular. Because if this thing is not done in a few weeks, and if there is major pain at the pump and that impacts groceries and obviously spikes inflation again, then it's over for the Republicans, even if this was the right thing to do at this point in world history. There still will be political pain. That's undeniable. And the most important thing that O'Reilly had to say on that front, and Mark's big oil bet, all coming up on KCMO. Now, when it comes to your family, you're busy, I'm busy, 3 little kids running around. You want to save time. You want convenience when getting those groceries. And you can do it with Hy-Vee. Download the app or go to Hy-Vee.com. Choose your store, select your items, and Hy-Vee does the shopping for you. All I have to do is pick up the order or have it delivered right to my house. Save time, save money. What could be better? Only at Hy-Vee.
The fun's not done after Mundo in the Morning. Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Join me for Uncanceled at 10 o'clock right here on KCMO Talk Radio.
$9:35. Good morning. We got a half hour until Keatsman Uncanceled coming up on KCMO Talk Radio. By the way, join Kevin this Wednesday and Thursday to watch some college basketball coming up this week. He'll be out in Lee Summit at Conrad's Kitchen and Tap House. He'll be doing a show there from 10 to 11 on Wednesday and Thursday, and then hang out, watch some basketball. I see Mizzou's playing at 12:30 on Thursday, so
11:30.
Oh, 11:30.
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
Even
very good
better
deal.
for us.
Even better.
It's daylight savings time, remember?
Thank you, John. So Wednesday afternoon, after Kevin's off the air, hang out, get some lunch, enjoy Conrad's. Mark will stop by. John will be there. I'll stop by as well one of those 2 days. And then same thing again on Thursday. You got
right
two
down
chances.
there on 3rd Street, right by the railroad tracks in Lee Summit.
Can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. So go down, RSVP now at KCMOTalkRadio.com. So Bill O'Reilly was on the show last hour, and I thought that Bill was a little, I don't know if shorter is the right word, but he sounded, and maybe it's because of the topic, but he sounded more serious than maybe he sometimes does in our conversations since we've been talking to each other on the show now for, 6-7 years, whatever it's been. But he was very much like right to the point. Not that he isn't usually very clear, but he just got right to his point. He got in, he got out more so today than maybe I felt like he does in the past. And I don't know why. I just thought it was interesting as we were having the conversation. And the first thing I asked O'Reilly this morning was about what's going on with Operation Epic Fury and the number one story he's watching this week as it relates to the war overseas.
The effect on the economy, not just America, but worldwide. So if you got a doubling in oil prices, it's even more than that. Everybody's going to suffer, all the consumers all over the world. And so in America, we have people who are willing to tough it out, but also people don't want any inconvenience at all. And that becomes a political issue for President Trump. So this morning, Schumer, the Senate minority leader, said you got to start releasing the reserves, the oil reserves. That is actually a smart move, and I believe it will happen because Americans are very concerned about their wallets, and they don't want to hear a lot of theory about what Iran could or could not do. They are impatient with this whole process.
Well, he's right about that. They are impatient, and obviously most of us remember what happened 20 years ago. Not that we are duplicating Iraq or Afghanistan or anything like that. That's not what's going on. But there is not a long leash, and there's not a great appetite for that, any of it, back here in America, especially if you start to see a big uptick in oil prices. Then O'Reilly went on to tell us this last hour.
Well, if oil prices don't come down, and I believe they will come down, but if they don't, it's over for the Republican Party. They'll lose both houses in November. Because the oil prices go to food, cost more to transport the food to the grocery stores, goes to your airline tickets. Airline tickets will go through the roof now. And it goes to your heating and cooling of your house. It's across the board. So inflation will go up, and people's resources will go down. And then millions of Americans go, was this worth it? And the answer will be no. So it's a huge gamble on the part of President Trump.
That was Bill O'Reilly. The full interview will be up on the podcast after the show, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Just search KCMO Talk Radio and subscribe there. Now, O'Reilly mentioned the oil reserves, and he mentioned Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer said yesterday, due to Donald Trump's reckless war of choice, gas prices have surged to their highest levels in years, topping $100 a barrel for the first time since 2022. Today, I demand President Trump release oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve immediately to bring relief to Americans at the pump. Okay, O'Reilly said he'll probably do that. However, let's not forget, back in 2020, Chuck Schumer bragged about blocking the effort to refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And now he's in part complaining that we haven't yet released oil from it. And don't forget then, that was when Trump was in office the first time around. Then when Biden got stuck with high gas prices, what happened? He released a bunch of oil from the Strategic Reserve, right? But here's why he was doing it. He didn't want to be energy independent. There are two ways that you can obviously decrease the price of oil. You can create more supply, or you can try to lessen demand. And you really don't want to lessen demand because then you're just hurting the economy in another way. The easiest thing for any president to do is to just take the shackles off the industry and drill, baby, drill. And Biden didn't want to do it. So then when Russia invades Ukraine, oil prices start going up. And it's like, all right, let's get some energy independence around here, baby. What's he doing? Shutting down the Keystone Pipeline. That's what he's doing. That's where he's going. And it's like, man, that's not the answer here. So we've got a bunch of these strategic reserves flowing into the American economy, but we haven't even yet fully replenished it. So if you're going to hear from any of these guys, whether it's Schumer, Jeffries, or any of them, and they're screaming about these strategic reserves and how we got to get them out into the American economy to get the gas prices back down to where they were, that's not a wrong thing to note. But remember, why are we in the position to begin with in terms of having a strategic oil reserve that is not as full as it needs to be? And it's because the last guy was draining them at a time when the easier thing that he could have been doing was encouraging oil companies to do more drilling to get the supply up. Instead, he just unloaded a bunch of the reserves, and that wasn't really good for anybody. On top of that, let's go back a few years to the CARES Act. There was a provision in the CARES Act that would have refilled the Strategic Petroleum Reserve at $24 a barrel. That was like peak COVID, March, April of 2020. And what happened? Schumer said no. He called it a bailout for big oil at the time. So even if we do release some of the oil from the Strategic Reserve, which is probably going to happen, as O'Reilly noted, it will get us even lower, which obviously there's some risk that comes with that until we get that thing filled back up. And we could have done it 5 years ago at 24 or 6 years ago now at $24 a barrel. And we were told that that was going to be a bailout for big oil. So go make sense of that. I mean, it's just unbelievable when you look back on the last few years and how we even got here in the first place. We'll wrap it up with you at 913-408-7957 on a busy Monday morning across Kansas City on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We are streaming all morning long right here on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Kevin Keatsman, Uncanceled, is coming up at 10.
Vince Colonnese here. Join me for your lunch hour from 11 to 2 on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, in the 6 o'clock hour, feels like a lifetime ago, but Parlay Van Sickle on the other side of the glass decided he was going to dabble in some oil futures betting.
Blue Horseshoe loves Endicott Steel.
Easy does it there, Mark.
Wall Street.
Yep. Love the reference, John. Nice job.
Ooh, but, I'm watching the meter run here behind him.
Mark decided he was going to place a bet on oil prices being above $100 a gallon by 9 a.m. And you lost that bet by like 60 cents, right?
Yes, I would have lost it, but I doubled down. I cashed out at about $14.
Okay.
So about $11 down from where I was. And I said it's going to go under 100 so I could just maybe break even. So I ended up being down by about $3.
Okay. So what you did was you cashed out your $25 free bet from FanDuel at $14, and then you basically took that money and you bet on the under $100, and you got yourself almost back to even.
Yep, that's right.
All right. Nice job, man. Nice job there, Mark.
I don't think I'd like to play this every day.
Well, it's back over $100 right now.
Yep.
It's at $100.98 for a barrel of oil as we sit here right now. So, if you had 9:30 on your betting slip, you might have been okay. But at 9 a.m., you were under $100, so you had to kind of split the baby on that one, Mark. But you hung in there, buddy. Nice job.
And I have breaking news. If it goes over 100 in the next 10 minutes, I'll be up for the day.
Wait, you just said you were done.
I put it back in.
You just said you were done doing this,
I
Mark.
put it back in just before the segment.
You said you were done with this.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-BETS-OFF.
Yeah.
1-800-GAMBLER.
Jeez, Mark, take it easy.
No, I just had to do this for the final segment.
I know.
This is great.
All
I
right.
mean, we're at 101.37 right now.
Yeah, it's
looking
going up.
pretty, and then I can cash out at 10 o'clock.
Unless
Kevin wants me to put a bet on it. We can follow it during his show, too.
Oh, Mark was texting me over the weekend. He wants to bet the Federal Reserve interest rates. I'm like, where's Esther George when I need her? Get her back on the show. Let's see what she thinks.
This is like watching every pitch in baseball and watching the counter go. It's like, what if you bet on every pitch going over 100 miles an hour or not? Here, it'd be like this because now it's 101.17.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now in real time.
That's how that guy Clase got in trouble. He was, insider pitching.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was throwing balls on the first pitch so that his guys would hit.
Was that last year or 2 years ago?
It might have been last year.
Wow. Jeez. All right. Well, Mark, you got 8 minutes and 15 seconds left. We'll see how you do here to wrap up the show. Mark's now betting oil futures. That seems like a treacherous road to go down, Mark.
I'm trying to figure what triggers. It'll go to 22 now. It will drop to 19.
Yeah.
I'm like, is this because somebody just got a tank full up at Costco?
Oh, my goodness. It's been a wild ride.
Down
Mark,
3 more.
3 up, boy.
101.16.
Oh, no. Here we go.
What's coming next? Maybe needs a new pair of shoes.
Let's go.
This is why I don't like
Here we
betting
go.
this stuff. We're going up.
101.22.
Oh, we're
Can't
trending
do it.
back up. We're getting back up. Oh, my goodness. Don't do it. Don't do it. Where's Billy Long when I need him? Billy to just do some,
How about it in? 12 and a half, 15, 7 and a half, $20, 2 and a half, 5, 7 and a half. I yield back.
We're back under 101, Mark. Not good. Not good. Not good. Billy what did he text me this morning? He texts me randomly at like 5 in the morning some days. Oh, he sent me some Elon Musk tweet. I'll check it out after the show. In the meantime, President Trump likes to give a specific gift to people who visit the White House. And it's not a MAGA hat. It's not a Trump steak. It's got nothing to do with crypto or anything like that. It's a pair of leather Oxfords. Wall Street Journal writing here that Trump has been gifting footwear to agency heads, lawmakers, White House advisors, and VIPs. He asks at his cabinet meetings, "Did you get the shoes?" Some people have laced up in the Oval Office. During a lunch meeting in January, Trump suddenly pivoted to his incredible new shoes and gave Tucker Carlson a pair of brown wingtips. "All the boys have them," said a female White House official. Another joked, "It's hysterical because everybody's afraid not to wear them."
They say, sir, did you get the shoes?
The shoe salesman in chief is paying attention. Trump has fallen in love with Florsheim, the American brand that's been pairing comfort and style for more than a century. They're also affordable. Many cost $145. The president has taken a guessing people's shoe size in front of them. That's hysterical.
Classic.
That is just all time. You look like an 8 to me. You're not packing much. You're a size 8, aren't you? I could see it. He asks an aide to put in
Asia, they're different.
Little Marco's a 12, though.
Yeah, Marco's shoe size keeps getting bigger, I think, in Trump's world. He asks an aide to put in an order, and a week later, a brown Florsheim box arrives at the White House. Trump sometimes signs the box or attaches a note of gratitude, according to people familiar with the ritual. So there you go. You know you're in Trump's good graces when you get a pair of shoes from the big guy. But it's hysterical. I could see these guys every day they wear these shoes. They're like, oh, they're kind of dirty, but I don't want to not wear the shoes today. I got to wear the shoes. What do I do? Okay, fine, I'll wear the shoes. And then Trump knocks them because the shoes are dirty that morning or something. I could totally see that playing out. Unbelievable. But I like to see that. They're affordable, too. It's not like it's a $1,000 pair of shoes. $145 for a nice pair of shoes from the big guy. I like that a lot. Very nice of him. Very, very nice.
Such a nice man.
Lastly, did you see these photos of Joe Burrow, the Bengals quarterback, and actress Jessica Alba, who recently got divorced, hanging out in Vegas at what looks like a blackjack table? Well, it's not what you think it is. TMZ this morning tossed cold water on the buzz that these two are an item. Jessica Alba is still dating actor Danny Ramirez, TMZ reported, which added she and Joe Burrow were part of a larger group of pals hanging out. But there's a photo of the two of them just sitting there at a blackjack table, and boy, are they yucking it up. Burrow was in attendance at UFC 326 in Vegas before attending the Zero Bond Vegas opening at the Wynn Hotel on Saturday, John.
You would think that the pink fur coat is hers, but it's actually Joe's. Yeah. It's not Jessica's.
That's exactly right.
He has some of the craziest looking stuff.
He does, yeah. Although, who would you take, Kelce or Burrow?
Well, I think they're in a competition.
I agree. I don't get it. TMZ added there was no PDA or a behavior suggesting anything beyond friendship between Alba and Burrow. So there's nothing there, according to TMZ. Although based on TMZ's track record recently with Nancy Guthrie, I'm not sure I'm going to trust them until I see otherwise. I need somebody else to confirm that before I roll with TMZ. But I'll roll with Keatsman, and I'll roll with Uncanceled, and I'll roll with Mark and his oil bet. We going to get the over 100? What are we at right now?
100? Not looking good.
99.8.
You need under or over?
Under.
Oh, you need
by 10
under.
cents.
Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah, you're not going to get there, Mark. Sorry. I don't think so. All right, we'll see. 3 minutes to go. Have a great rest of your Monday. Enjoy the beautiful weather. We're back tomorrow morning at 6.